Test, can you hear this? How's this? Too loud? Not loud enough? Can anybody hear it? Not loud enough? Better? How we doing, Terry?
Good evening. Welcome to our special board meeting, Thursday, August 19th, 2021. I will ask board members, please, at this time to introduce themselves, beginning with Nancy.
Veronica Babcock.
Becky Fless.
Tony Deep. Matthew Marshall. Jim Lothridge.
Our administrative staff, please.
Pat Hopkins, Superintendent.
Thank you all. Oh, yes. Thank you. And tonight we have our own favorite Rob Munzing, who is live streaming for us since we are in this special location. So your faces, your skin faces. It's very nice. Thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Is public comment. We will have two public comment sections tonight. We'll have two public comments tonight. The first one that we will do is public comment for items not on the agenda. So if you're here to speak about something that is not on the agenda and that does not have to do with the return to school plan, this is your opportunity, and we would ask that you stand, go to the podium over there, state your name and the community that you live in. So there's no one here for that purpose, so we will continue. We will review. We have a review and approval of the agenda minutes, prioritization of items, and alteration of the established agenda format sequence as needed.
Yes, I have a couple additions. Yesterday we sent out a revised agenda that includes some additional resignation letters and some additional general information regarding transfers, hiring of ed techs, etc. Since that time, we have three additional transfers. Victoria Chapman will transfer from child nutrition at the middle school to be an ed tech 2 over at special ed. At the middle school, Tracy Booker is being transferred from an ed tech 1 special ed position at the Pittston Randolph Consolidated School to an ed tech 3, also at Pittston Randolph Consolidated School, but it will be an Ed Tech 3 special ed position. And Jenny Skipper is being transferred from an Ed Tech 1 special ed position at Helen Thompson into an Ed Tech 3 special ed position at Helen Thompson. And those are all of the changes that I have.
Thank you. May I please have a motion to accept the agenda as altered?
Yes, I'll make that motion, Becky.
Motion by Alyssa, second by Tony. All those in favor? Any opposed? And no abstentions. The motion carries. Nominations.
Well, correspondence as written.
Mm-hmm.
Other general information I also have just as written. And then nominations, I have Sarah Minzy. I'd like to nominate her as a social worker in grades K through 5. This would be a district position. It's at $68,880. It is an ESSER 3 funded position, so it's a grant funded position. We talked about that during the budget development process, and it's only for 2 years.
Okay. May I have a motion to accept this?
So moved for the nomination.
Motion by Tony, second by Matt. Questions or conversation from board members?
I'm sorry, which Matt?
Matt, oh, sorry, Marshall. No questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Policy?
We're bringing forward a second reading to rescind policy IHBGB. Thank you. We're bringing forward policy IHBGB for rescission. It's the second reading on this. That policy is in the process of being updated, and we've already had it for the first reading. So I'd like to move it for rescission on the second reading.
Motion by Tony, second by Alyssa. Questions or comments about this rescinding policy? Yes, Jim.
Could you explain what this particular item means? I don't quite understand it.
Gosh. This is a policy that talks to the rights, or speaks to the rights for homeschooled students who have disabilities. But this is being rescinded because that information has been blended into another policy. So it still exists, but it exists elsewhere.
Thought that might be able to. Thank you.
Great. Any further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next, old business to discuss the return to school. At this time, Pat and Angela have a presentation that they would like to make.
I think it's easier just for us to stand up so that we can go back and forth in our presentation. For board members, you're not easily able to see this presentation because of the way we're set up. So I've given you a hard copy of the presentation, and for everyone else, it is going to be displayed up here on the screen. So thank you everyone for coming. We know that this is certainly an important conversation to be had. So we're here tonight to really make a recommendation to the board regarding the return to school plan, and whether that includes masks or pool testing or whatever. So first of all, I just want to really talk about what our overall goal is, our intent. What are we wanting to accomplish? And first and foremost, the plan is to have all students back in school in person 5 days a week. That last year, if you recall, there were CDC guidelines regarding the physical distancing that were in place, and it was just impossible for us to be able to bring back all of the students with those limitations in place. Trying to feed students, walking through the hallways, it was extremely difficult. I'll get into the new guidelines soon, but with the new guidelines, we are able to bring all students back 5 days a week. So that is our absolute priority, and we want to do so in a way that minimizes disruption to their education. We want to make sure that they're here every single day as much as possible.
Sorry. There we go.
And while they're here, we really want to make sure that their learning space is appropriate. It's developmentally appropriate. Last year, again, we had to be pretty rigid in how we designed our classrooms. We took every item out of classrooms that weren't required. We put them in storage. We had our elementary students in rows in often cases, in desks, and that really is not the type of developmentally appropriate learning that we know is a best practice for students. So we're trying to reinstate those practices to make for a more flexible learning appropriate space for those children. And part of the recommendation, or the significant part of the recommendation, includes reducing chances of students missing school and having to learn remotely or be back in isolation. So that is the fundamental elements to our recommendation. So what the guidelines now say. So the guidance from the CDC, and these are both a combination of recommendations and requirements. So what we're being told is that it is more important to have students in person 5 days a week than mandating the physical distancing. So they want us to provide the physical distancing when possible, but it's not mandated like last year. Having students in person is the priority. So that's where we put number one. Absolutely, that's what we want. They are recommending universal mask wearing when in school buildings, not outside, not necessarily during athletics, not outside activities, but when they are in school. And we'll talk a little bit more about why and what the importance of that is. Physical distancing when possible. They're strongly encouraging that when we can still provide a 3-foot distancing in the classroom, down hallways, that is still a best practice. Lunches, as much as possible. Last year it was 6-foot distancing for lunches, as you will recall, and that was extremely difficult to do. They still encourage that, but it should not be the factor that prevents us from having all students in school 5 days a week. They're recommending pool testing. And let me just check here. Is this where, I'm sorry, we were pulling this together pretty much at the last minute, putting some of the final touches on this. So pool testing. Maybe this is a good place for me to explain what pool testing is? Yeah. All right. So pool testing, some of you have probably heard, it's a screening mechanism that has been set forth by the Department of Education, or actually the federal government, and it is strongly encouraged by the state CDC and the DOE. And basically what it is families can choose, it's optional, they can choose and staff can choose to participate in this testing. It would happen once a week in every building. And what would happen is that every classroom would receive a bunch of swabs, right? And the students would swab their nose, just down at the end of their nose. It wouldn't be the one that sticks way up. And you would swab your nose, and then that swab would go into like a test tube, a little container. Those containers would then be collected, and they would be sent off-site to a testing facility. And it would take about 2 days, and we would receive the results back from those tests. If no one tests positive in that pool, then you're fine. You just continue on, and you do the same testing the following week. If one of the tests or more comes back positive, then those pool of individuals will be tested again using the Binex Now test, which is one of those immediate tests where they would be tested here in the building, the nurse would test them, and within 15 minutes or so, they would know whether they're a positive or not. If they're not a positive, they would then go back to the classroom and you would just resume your day. If there was a positive, then that person would be sent home, would have to quarantine, and then we would have to look at the rest of the students and staff members who participated in that pool of tests to determine what the contact tracing implications are and whether there's anyone there who has to be quarantined. So it's kind of complex. I have heard that the startup is overwhelming. To be truthful, there's a lot of work that has to be done. However, other schools that have done it, they said once you get the system operational, it's pretty smooth going from there. But that's what pool testing is. There's also the contact tracing when we have a positive case. Many of you will remember contact tracing for last year. That happened quite frequently. And unfortunately, there were situations that we did our contact tracing and it actually shut us down because we had so many staff members and we had so many students that had to be placed in quarantine. Contact tracing is still required this year. So if we have a student, we have a staff member who comes into school who tests positive, there's going to have to be contact tracing. Now, unfortunately, most of that contact tracing happened on weekends, it happened on nights. It was very burdensome for many of our staff members, especially our nurses, who really did the heavy lift. They did most of that work. But that is still in place. So, kind of back to the universal mask wearing, the CDC and the department is telling us that if you have individuals who are wearing a mask and they are deemed a close contact, they do not have to quarantine, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. The quarantine measures, as I said, they're still in place. And they're also recommending that we limit the number of non-essential visitors. So we'll have to work through that. Overall, there are three major strategies that the department and the CDC is asking school districts to promote to really minimize disruption to learning. And you can see those three. Increase vaccination rates, universal masking to reduce the requirement to quarantine, because if students aren't quarantined, they're in school. Pool testing to proactively identify those positive cases. If someone's symptomatic, we know to have them tested. The issue here is with the pool testing, it helps identify those individuals who are asymptomatic, that they don't realize that they're a positive, to try to catch them before they infect others. So.
Sorry, it skipped.
So what do we have in place so far? What have we been doing? What are some of our strategies? We've had a lot that we've done, actually. But just to highlight, this year we're using federal dollars to hire 9 additional classroom teachers throughout the district. And the intent is to manage class sizes, to lower class sizes, so that we can help with the physical distancing requirement, but also help with the fact that we had a number of students who were out of school for a period of time last year, and so we want to be able to provide more intensive support academically for those students. We're buying additional space in order to accommodate the additional staff members. So over at Pittston Randolph, there is a modular unit presently with 4 classrooms. We're buying 2 more classrooms that will be attached so that we'll have a total of 6. And Helen Thompson, we have 4 classrooms coming. And so there will be a modular unit out there. They were supposed to be here by mid-July, installed so that they would be ready. But with so many things right now, shortage of workers, of supplies, materials, they have not arrived entirely. I believe Pittston, 1 unit has arrived, the other unit is almost here, and Helen Thompson. Our units are in Virginia. They got as far as Virginia, and the drivers came down with COVID. And so they're sitting in Virginia waiting for a transportation company this weekend to go down, pick them up, and bring them here. So they will not, neither of them will be ready for this first day of school, unfortunately. We had hoped, but that will not be the case. But hopefully by the end of September, they will be fully operational. In addition to that, we purchased a system through Siemens called O2 Prime, and they are filters that are throughout all of our schools. And they are filters to help pick up some of the particles that prevent the spread of germs. So that was a huge investment that we made in this district, but we felt that the air quality was extremely important, and that was our first expense, our first project when we received the federal money. And then, of course, we'll continue to do our cleaning procedures. We'll encourage hand washing, sanitizing, that type of thing. All right, something else that is happening. The Department of Education in the state of Maine, they're going to be releasing vaccination rates on a monthly basis starting in September. One, they're currently collecting the data on student vaccinations for students ages 10 to 19. Even though 10 are not quite yet eligible, that's still the range that they said that they're using. And they're going to be releasing those percentages per zip code. So we will have an idea as a district, the percentage of our students that are vaccinated. They had hoped to have that information out by the middle of August. Unfortunately, there were some problems with that, so I believe they're hoping to have the information released by the end of next week. In addition, school staff, all staff, we are required to collect information on whether they're vaccinated or not. We do not have to identify the person. It's anonymous. However, we have to find out how many are vaccinated. That information has to be provided to the Department of Education every month, and then that information will be released to parents or to the public. And it will be released by building, so you will know the percentage of staff in each building that has been vaccinated, and then there'll be an other. And the other will cover like our bus drivers, our central office, or staff members who travel between buildings. So the quarantine procedures, this is what they are. If we have a positive case and we have to identify close contacts, if you have a student who is wearing a mask, if we're mandating masks, if that's what the board decides, you have with mask, if you are 3 feet apart in distance in a classroom, there are no symptoms, then there's no need for that student to quarantine. Last year, many of you will remember, that was not the case. If you were in the classroom, you were within, at first it was 6 feet, then it was changed to 3 feet. If you were within that distance, your child had to quarantine. So moving forward, that is not going to be the case if you mask. I know the impact that all that quarantining had on families last year. That was significant. So this is an opportunity to lessen the impact on families. Without a mask, if a student is vaccinated or staff is vaccinated and there are no symptoms, then again, there's no quarantining. So if you're vaccinated, you don't have to be quarantined, either with or without a mask. Also, positive case, if you're without a mask, you're unvaccinated, you have to quarantine. You have to quarantine for 10 days, and then you can't come back until you have a negative test. So your child will not be able to return to school until we have a negative test. Without mask, if you're vaccinated and you have symptoms, then you have to quarantine. And again, we need to have that negative test. And that's all done through our nursing department. Our nursing department is just phenomenal, and they work with families to make sure everyone knows exactly what the requirements are. But I'm really stressing this because of the importance that quarantining is not behind us. Close contacting is not behind us. We're still going to be in a situation where we may have a classroom that has to be quarantined potentially, or at least a large number of students who have to be quarantined. Now, this is in the building. You don't have a requirement to wear masks outside. So if you have children who are participating in athletics and they're not wearing masks and they're deemed a close contact, they will have to quarantine unless they prove that they're vaccinated. Okay? There we go. All right, I'm now going to turn this over to Angela. We did send out a survey, wanted to get a sense from our community and our staff regarding this information that I'm sharing with you. And Angela is the person who collated the information. She created the survey, so she is going to share the results with you.
Does this work? Do I have to turn it on or?
I don't think so.
Hello?
There you go.
Good. So at the early August board meeting, after discussion, it was requested that we develop a survey, and the board members discussed what they would like to see on the survey to help them not make the final decision, but be informed and understand the sentiment of the community. So we sent 2 different surveys out, but essentially asking the same questions. This survey is our staff results, and about 55% of our staff responded, with the greatest percentage at the middle school, followed by the high school. And on the community survey, we had 842 responses. It was, and I can't give you the exact number because I would have to do an attendance roster to manage names against or email addresses against student names, and there was certainly not enough time for that. And so scanning the results and looking at the number of students, we have about 2,000 students, just under 2,000 students in the district, with many families having multiple students. It's somewhere between a third and a half of our student population is represented through the survey. I combined the data, and so that I'll walk you through this because it might not be as easy to see, but if you can see the colors, that will help. So one of the first questions is about universal masking. Specifically, the CDC, US CDC and Maine CDC recommend that all students and staff enter school this fall wearing masks. The link to the federal recommendations was provided, and we asked families to provide, and staff to check the statement that they supported most. So there are many options. In light blue, if they felt that everyone should be required to wear masks while in school, they indicated yes, and that is the light blue bar. So the top set of 3 bars is our elementary staff perspective, and the next set of 3 bars is our elementary community perspective. So anyone 11 and under. Our next set of bars is our secondary staff perspective, so that would be middle school and high school. And the final 3 bars is our secondary community perspective, anyone who has children 12 and older. If you have children in both categories, you are able to go through and respond to both categories, because you might have different feelings depending upon the situation or the age of the child. So you can see in blue where we stand. In the dark blue, that is a combination of questions. That includes unvaccinated students and staff should be required to wear masks while in school. Added to, mask wearing should be required when a school has 3 or more positive cases. Added to the responses, if mask wearing for all means there will be fewer quarantines put in place, I support mask wearing. So that would be the combined responses. If I need to disaggregate that, I can, and the board has that specific data available to them. That's the dark blue. And then what's represented as orange on the screen is that parents or guardians or staff, depending on which group was answering, should have the right to decide whether their children wear masks while in school. So that's the response in the yellow or the orange bars under universal masking. The next set of questions that were asked related to pool testing. As Superintendent Hopkins discussed pool testing, we did provide a brief overview of pool testing in the survey to try to provide a little bit of context for people before they answered the question. And I'll just explain the bars. The light blue means I fully support pool testing and I would participate, or I would have my child participate. The dark blue, the dark blue means I fully support pool testing, but I would not, or I would not have my child participate in pool testing. The yellow bar means I would support pool testing if it means I wouldn't need to wear a mask. And the final bar on the right-hand side says I do not support pool testing. So, and then to go across the rows, we have again the elementary staff perspective. Left is fully support, right is don't support. The elementary community's perspective is next. The secondary staff perspective, followed by the secondary community perspective. The final question is related to transportation. Part of this question was more to just ensure that we are continuing to inform our community and raise awareness that federal law through the federal rules really through the U.S. Department of Transportation requires masks on all public transit, and school buses are considered public transit. So it is not optional. We don't get to weigh in as a community or as a board as to whether or not students wear masks on school buses. They will be required to wear masks on school buses. We'll do everything we can to make that a smooth process for children or students. And just to understand, the community responded the blue of the pie chart, the 63.7%. The response was, I understand and my child will ride the bus. And the red response is, I understand and my child will not ride the bus. And that was also great information for our own transportation department to understand kind of what is our percentage and how does that rate to our typical percentage of ridership. So that's the data.
So what's the recommendation? My recommendation to the board, I've discussed this with others, administrative team, but this is the recommendation. I want all students back in school as much as possible. And so my recommendation is that we have students here 5 days per week. I am recommending universal masking. The reason I'm recommending universal masking, one, it is a recommendation from CDC. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist, and so I don't have the background. I am going to trust what I'm being told. But the other larger issue goes back to what my goal is. The goal is to have students in school. And I want to minimize the amount of time that students are going to have to quarantine. And by requiring universal masking, that will limit the amount of time that they have to be quarantined should they be deemed a close contact. This is ever evolving. 2 weeks ago, when we first brought this up, the Delta variant wasn't quite as serious as it appears to be now. Things just seem to be progressing worse and worse. My intent is to launch like a district health response team. I want to pull together representations from the administration, from our staff who are trained in the medical field, our nurses, and I would like to have association representatives I'm not sure how broad you want to include that, whether you want to include a parent, whether you want to include a board member. I haven't been able to flesh out all of those details. But what I'd like to do is to create and kind of launch this response team so that we can get together periodically every single month and assess some of this information. My recommendation of universal masking is not a universal masking for the entire school year. It's a universal masking for the start of the school year, and let's see how it goes. I would really love to have the board review this on a monthly basis, and let's see how things are going. And if we get to a place where it is no longer necessary, then absolutely pull back. I mean, I don't want to wear a mask either, and I know that many of us are in that position, and we don't want to. However, if it keeps more students in school so that they're not quarantined, and I'm thinking about the impact on families. I heard from a lot of families last year who were upset that their children had to spend so much time at home, and it required them taking time off of work for childcare. If we require masks, they will be in school more often, and the impact on families will lessen. So that's my recommendation. Thank you. Any questions from the board? Teresa?
Yes, I was wondering if we could read the letter from our nurse regarding testing.
Once Becky gets into the public comments, Becky will read all of the letters that were sent to the board, and that will be read publicly. Any other questions? Colin?
Could you speak to why there hasn't been required vaccination for employees as part of this recommendation?
That is just not a conversation that we have had. Certainly the board could engage in the conversation, but we just haven't gone down that road. I really can't give you more than that. It has been optional for our staff, and I just have not pursued making that a mandatory item. I would rather go with the mandatory masking first, and then rather than doing a universal mandatory vaccination.
I only bring it up because it's been rather public lately with military branches, but also health workers. There are a few places that we go back and forth than we have.
Yeah, and I hear the news as well about that, and there's a lot of pushback with individuals leaving the profession as a result. We are already short staff, and if you mandate vaccinations, I'm not sure what that will mean for our community, our school community. It could very well mean that we receive more resignations. We can't close our doors if we don't have staff. We have to keep our doors open and educate our children. And so it's really it's a balancing act there. I don't want to run the risk of losing our employees and then not be able to provide the education that we need to our students.
Matthew?
Pat, as far as pool testing, I see pool testing potentially being really time and resource intensive. Are we set up throughout the district to have enough? Are teachers going to be involved in swabbing, or I mean, who's going to be handling the swabs? Is it going to be the school nurses that's doing it all? I mean, what does that look like?
I don't have all the answers, and the reason that I don't have all the answers is because we talked about this last spring, and the board voted at that time not to move forward with pool testing. So because you voted not to move forward, I didn't do any work, right, on it, because it was off my plate. I had other things that I was working on. So all I can tell you is that it is an extremely heavy lift on the front end, from what I understand. And at the time, way back in the spring when we discussed it with the nurses were very apprehensive about this, and they were concerned absolutely about the workload. We had discussed, if the board had decided to move forward, to try to hire someone who would take on that responsibility so that the burden would not be added to our nurses' shoulders. Would we find someone now to do that? I don't know. Again, I can't employ ed techs. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to hire someone to do that. In terms of teachers, the teachers would play a role in collecting the samples, but they would not be doing the swabbing That would be left to the students. The students would do their own swabbing.
So I just got one quick follow-up.
Is there any way that you can take the mic so I bet you can speak from the board
Sure.
members?
I thought I spoke loud enough.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Sorry about that.
So the only other thing I would say about pool testing is between the time the child does their own test and turns it into either the teacher or the nurse, there's 2 days. What happens between the day that they test and the day the results come back, which is 2 days, when they've been everywhere else? I mean, it seems to me to be very difficult to contact trace. You see my point?
Yeah, I mean, the intent is to catch asymptomatic students.
Yeah.
But you're right. They're going to be just going about their day-to-day business before the test results come back. Now, it was mentioned that there's a 30% minimum participation rate. That's what we were told last spring. When I look at the Department of Education standard operating procedure, it still includes that. However, I was told repeatedly from the Department of Education that that 30% requirement no longer exists. So I think Matt had a go. Tony?
I think I had the next, and I just want to ask a clarifying question. And obviously, thank you for putting this presentation together. It's very comprehensive, and here we are again, making these decisions, as well as all the other pieces that go into opening a school for the students. And I appreciate the thought that's gone into this from the whole team. Just to clarify, the quarantine process is still in place. That if someone presents with a positive case, then that quarantine process will be engaged, unless. As far as the contact tracing goes, unless there's either a mask or vaccination or both.
Well, if you're positive, you're quarantining, regardless.
Okay.
Okay? So if you test positive, you have to quarantine, whether you're wearing a mask or not, period.
Vaccinate, whatever.
But if you are a close contact to someone who tests positive, and you're all wearing masks, you were generally 3 feet apart. You were not closer than 3 feet apart within it's still a 24-hour period, then you will not have to close contact, which is different than the process we used last year. Last year, that person would have had to quarantine for upwards of 10 days.
So we've got more confidence in the work that the mask is doing.
The people making that recommendation, it's not me. They're making that recommendation. So yes, I would say they have more confidence.
Okay, thank you. I think. Oh, yeah, thanks.
Regarding the pool testing, it's not overly onerous to get set up once the system's in place. I did it last year at Colby College. We did 300,000 tests. So getting the system in place, I've already offered Becky to do things. There's a lot of way to do efficiencies and get the system set up so it can be done within 15 minutes at the beginning of a classroom day. The advantage of the pool testing and the PCR test, the kids swab their nose, throw it in a test tube, it goes, that's the more sensitive lab tested, as opposed to the antigen test, which is the 15-minute test you do after the fact. And we saw on many occasions last year, a student at Colby tested positive, had no symptoms, and we threw him into quarantine for a week. And we did the PCR test every single day and the antigen test. And it was sometimes until day 7. They were negative on that PCR test, and all of a sudden they're getting ready to go free, and then they pop positive. But meanwhile, they could have been running around campus, infecting everyone in the dorms and stuff like that. So it's a gatekeeper. It's an indicator. The antigen test is going to catch you, in theory, if you're 3 or 4 days positive or whatever, and probably more transmissible. But the pool testing and that PCR test is to get it first and foremost, where I'm not a medical personnel, but the slightest a bit of COVID in your system, it'll get picked up. The 2-day turnaround's a bummer, but unless you're paying through the nose, you're not going to get. We got 24 hours. False positives were little to non-existent, and usually if it was a false positive, it was a lab error. It wasn't the problem. And sometimes with the antigen, the 15-minute test, if something goes wrong with either the cartridge or the solution, you know, in 15 minutes, you chuck that one, do it again, and you get your answer right there. But if pool testing is the way to go, we can set it up fairly easily. And for the staff and administration of the schools, you can do it as, you know, minimally as possible. So you're not wasting hours upon your day doing all this other stuff. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jim.
I have one question about pool testing primarily. Is this to catch asymptomatic students that are in the population so that we can at least see if we have a problem? Because that's the only place that I can see value here.
Yes, that's exactly it. Try to catch someone who's asymptomatic, because if they're already symptomatic, they're home.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
My only comment was, I know when we talked, like you mentioned, we said this was going to be overhead for the staff. Family from out of state, I know, dealt with this, like Matt explained, and caused some issues. But it seemed last year as well, and with the masking, we weren't seeing the issues in the schools. So it just feels like it would be too much of a burden on what we're already trying to do. And I appreciate that your recommendation is trying to get students back in school and keep them there. So I'm still a fan of not pool testing right now. And who knows what other things will come from the government and state level as we continue, as you mentioned, every month. So.
Any other questions?
Just one more, which is that for pool testing, the funding is provided?
By the Department of Education. There's no cost to the locals.
No local. Okay, thank you.
Anyone at this end of the table?
The quarantine procedures that you have in here, the two slides, that is what is planned no matter what's decided tonight on mask usage. This is what's going to be followed throughout the school year?
That is what we're going to follow if the board decides mandate masking. If the board does not decide mandate masking, then a student who is a close contact with a positive will have to quarantine. If it's not a universal masking, then it's quarantining for a close contact.
The only reason why I'm asking is, you know, you've got one slide with masks and one without masks. That's why I didn't know if you were planning on like mask being optional parent choice, if that you were preparing for that as well, or like.
If you decide that it's parental choice, then students who are deemed a close contact will have to be quarantined.
Okay, thank you.
My statement actually gets back to the letter from our nurse, so I'll just wait until that's read.
One other clarifying. So if we vote not to do a universal like statement as a district, we're going to do universal masking. So if there's a close contact, even if, you know, I'm wearing a mask, I'm still going to be quarantined as a close contact.
That is my understanding from the CDC, the Department of Education, that if it is not a universal masking, then you will have to quarantine even if you as an individual is wearing a mask. Yeah. And part of it comes back to the management of all of it, right? And being able to manage and determine who's wearing a mask, who's not wearing a mask. So
it's sort of all in. Yeah, got it.
One more question. You in your recommendations, you have not recommended pool testing in here. Are we taking that up as a separate issue? Or what's your thinking on it?
Yeah, I think with that we should take it up as a separate issue because the board voted against it last year because it's a heavy lift. I pulled it out intentionally, and I just think that we should take it up as a separate issue.
So you'll be making a recommendation on that?
Yeah, I'm kind of split. I mean, tonight we need to make a decision tonight. I'm honestly, I'm a little split on that. I understand the heavy lift. I'm interested in hearing what Matt Lillibridge has to offer in saying that the setup can be done. I am concerned about the workload for our staff, for our nurses, to manage the pool testing. However, with that said, I am advocating for having as many students in school full-time as much as possible. And if that means pool testing is a recommended preventative option, then I think we have to look at pool testing as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
And sorry, we only have a couple mics, so.
Here's our next fundraiser right here. 2 more mics for the high school. Pat, could you? I know you're not a magic ball, but if we don't adopt masking and we have enough close contact quarantining cases, have you given any thought to what happens if we have students who miss enough academic days to not meet their requirements, especially a class that's trying to graduate? What happens there?
Yeah, I haven't gone to that degree yet. However, because we are planning on having students in school in person 5 days a week, we are not planning to have the robust remote learning that we had last year. We don't have the remote academy planned. So if we have a significant amount of students who are out due to quarantining, then we've discussed administratively that at the high school and the middle school on a minimal basis, we can probably do some synchronous learning like we did last year. And we can have packets at the elementary that can be shared with parents when students are home. But if we're looking at something significant, then it's going to be definitely an issue for us. As a board, it will be an issue for you. With the associations because of the additional burden and workload that continuing to do the synchronous learning will have on our staff. And so I would fully expect that you will have to negotiate the impact of that with our associations if we continue to ask them to teach both in person and remotely. It's a heavy lift. And they were incredible last year. And to think that we can ask them to do it again to the same extent is just not reasonable. So I guess that's the best I can do right now to answer your question.
Pat, and just to be clear, if we were to have to open the contract because the teachers wanted to negotiate the impact of having to do remote learning again, there would be a fiscal note attached to that, and we can't just add money to the budget. So what would that mean? Worst case scenario.
I don't have an answer, Becky. Most likely there's a fiscal note to it, but I don't know that for certain until you open up the contract, and I don't know. Most likely it would mean that there's something else that we plan to do that we're not going to be able to do, that we wouldn't be able to spend money on that you had planned. I will say, I'm not sure how many board members know, I mentioned this earlier, that a lot of our contact tracing that happened last year, it happened on a Friday night. It happened on a Saturday. It happened on a Sunday. How many people remember every single Sunday receiving a letter from me saying, oh, we have another case? It was kind of a running joke in my house that it wouldn't be a Sunday if Pat wasn't doing some sort of letter regarding a positive case. Well, that wasn't just Pat. That was lots of people. And for our nurses, the impact on their personal life, I mean, they were working a lot of evenings, weekends, and we had to pay them for that extra time, just so you are aware. And that cost us somewhere around $10,000 extra because of the contact tracing work that had to be done. So there is a fiscal impact to the decisions that you make.
And that was paid for through grants, correct?
That particular, because we have the federal money, the COVID money that we received, that schools received, we were able to use that money to pay for the contact tracing. Yeah.
And is there grant money still available?
Well, right now I'm working on the American Rescue Plan, and that is the money that we're using to hire the 9 additional staff members. We're also using that money to hire 2 social workers, instructional coaches, some outdoor classrooms, hopefully. Gosh, I am over budget. I will say with the requests, we are over budget by about $40,000. So if we decide to access those funds, something else we wouldn't be able to do something else that we're currently planning on. Okay.
Thank you. I just want to be really clear that none of it's free, and the adjustments will have to be made either way, regardless of what we do.
Thank you. I had two more questions there.
Tony, you said one last time.
I know, right? Hold me accountable. Yeah. I should stop, using numbers. Back to the quarantine procedures section, I just wanted to clarify something there, that if we choose to not do universal masking, if someone has a positive case, identify close contacts without a mask and unvaccinated, means quarantine and can't return till there's a negative test. If that person, that student doesn't, or staff, I guess, doesn't get a negative test in that scenario, does that mean they're not coming back? What?
Can you answer that? I just don't remember. I mean, I have so much information up here. I just don't remember the specifics on the return. Our nurses are experts at this, and that was their responsibility to handle, and I'm just not able to retrieve that right now.
Yeah, I would have to look at the standard operating procedures that was provided by the U.S. And Maine CDC. Last year, there were instances where staff had double quarantines, so they had to be out for 20 days instead of 10 days to meet the requirement. And it's always in the details, right? So we'd have to go back and actually read line by line that SOP to understand if that's still the case.
I saw some mapping there, like if a family member comes up or whatever, it could end up in that sequential quarantine until you get the test. So there's sort of that, if you don't get the test, it's really going to stretch things out. And I for this round, just to clarify on the survey that we did, it looks like, so the universal masking survey, the bar graph, there's the light blue, the dark blue, and then I think it's orange or maybe it's yellow. The light blue and dark blue represent unique responses. Is that correct? Like those aren't, the light blue and the dark blue are not merged. Those are actually...
Right. The light blue represents all of the people who fully supported universal masking, no conditions attached. The dark blue represents all of the people who support universal masking with conditions.
Okay, so those...
And so you have another report that was sent, and I can certainly share that disaggregates the dark blue.
Right, with the pie charts.
And then the orange is all the people that universally believe that it's a personal or a family decision.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it? All right, thank you. Angela, thank you.
Pat, was that information regarding Tony's question included in the SOP that you sent us yesterday in the toolkit?
It should be, yes.
So I don't know if anybody spent any time reading that toolkit that Pat sent to us, but it would be good for board members to, even after this evening, to reflect on those. There's 2 attachments in that email that will answer many of your questions. Next, I will read the messages that we've received from the public while we were here. I just have received another one through ThrillShare. I will read that one from Sarah Ficus. Sorry I sent this message to Veronica first. Veronica. Jeez. But someone told me to send it to you instead. Thank you. Hi there, my name is Sarah Ficus. I'm here to speak about masks in our schools. What I do not want to see happen is more discrimination, separation, and shaming surrounding vaccinated individuals and unvaccinated individuals. I feel the worst thing MSAD11 could do is say no masks for vaccinated and masks for unvaccinated. To me, it's a choice of mask for all or mask by parental choice. Of course, I would fall on the parental choice side of things, and it looks, according to your survey, the community is also on the side of a parent's choice. Let's not forget who each and every one of you work for, the community. Thank you for your time. Sarah Ficus. The second email that we've received this evening is from Missy Dorr. Good evening. I wanted to reach out as I'm unable to attend this meeting this evening in person to express my opinion on the masks in schools. I think our children should all wear masks, just as the CDC recommends. This is a public health situation which requires the expertise of professionals in the public health field. Therefore, we should follow their recommendations. Furthermore, the schools are not offering another option for learning to keep children safe from the Delta variant. While I understand remote learning is not easy to manage, and as a teacher myself, I support dropping it, if masks are not worn, parents will have to decide between their children's well-being and safety of their public education. These choices do not support the philosophy of any school system. Thank you for taking the time to consider my opinion on this topic. I know it's a heated issue that you won't take lightly, and I appreciate the effort and energy that has got us to this point. I hope masks are mandated in MSAD11 so all of our students can be safe in school. Thank you, Missy Dorr, Pittston resident, children in 2nd and 6th grades. Let me make sure there's no more that have just come. All righty, and then I have several here. Dear MSAD11 school board members, I'm writing to oppose pool testing in our schools for the upcoming school year. When I attended the pool testing company's informational meeting last spring, they provided a lot of information, but one figure they cited stuck out in my head. That was that pooled testing, on average, identifies a positive COVID case 1% of the time. If this figure was cited by the company themselves, then I'd be inclined to think they are probably rounding up to 1%. But say it is 1% of the time. The Maine DOE put out a rule that for schools participating in pool testing to meet requirements to eliminate 3-foot spacing, each district must have 30% of its population participating. We as a district may be able to get to that number. We may not, but say we do. I personally don't believe we will get much higher than that percentage opting in. So in that case, we would be on average finding cases asymptomatic, mind you, as people with symptoms wouldn't be in school in the first place. 1% of the time in 30% of our population. That is a very small number. And for that, we would be testing children and possibly staff at least weekly, which would mean time out of the school day in which they have already lost so much learning time. For this reason, I do not believe MSAD11 should participate in pool testing. Our mitigation strategies have worked well thus far, and it has been shown that generally COVID is not spread in school. I believe if everyone follows the rules and stays home when they are sick, we will be fine without pool testing. Respectfully, Kristen Martin. She is a former lead nurse for the district. My name is Ben Carr, and I have an 8th grader at the middle school. I wanted to let the board know in advance of the meeting that I am entirely against mandating masks at the middle school, despite our prior national mask mandates and a high rate of vaccinations, especially in Maine, which has one of the highest rates in the nation. COVID-19 and the Delta variant have continued to flourish and make their way through the U.S. and the rest of the world. It can be hard to make sense of all the data, but one thing that is crystal clear is that COVID-19 and the Delta variant don't impact children the same way that they impact older adults, especially those with multiple comorbidities. I don't understand why we would have kids wear masks all day to keep them safe from something that doesn't seem to impact them any worse than the common cold. The last numbers I saw from the CDC indicate about 350 kids total have died from COVID. The CDC also reports that 500 kids died from the common cold just last year. We can debate the effectiveness of masks all day long, but having stringent mask mandates from the beginning and recently reinstating them hasn't kept COVID from impacting New York and California. The impact of COVID indefinitely has not been worse in states like South Dakota, Florida, and Texas that have had more lax mask mandates, or none at all in the case of South Dakota. The health impacts of wearing a mask all day are not yet known. I believe we exhale for a reason, and what comes out is supposed to come out, not to be recirculated in our bodies when we breathe in. I understand why surgeons wear them in surgery, but this is unprecedented, and it's entirely possible that wearing masks for extended periods, day in and day out, may prove to be worse for the vast majority of us that are not at high risk of dying from COVID. As expected, the majority of COVID deaths have occurred in those over 75 and those over 50 with multiple comorbidities, just like influenza and pneumonia. The anxiety and distraction of wearing a mask all day seems to heavily outweigh any possible benefit, especially when you consider COVID doesn't significantly impact kids. There's so much COVID that is out there, out of our control. But making kids wear masks should be a personal decision left up to the parents and children. The CDC made a recommendation, and we don't have to follow it unless the school board thinks we should. With all due respect to the school board, I don't believe this type of personal medical decision should ever be left to a small group of elected citizens. If this is a liability thing, I'll happily sign a waiver if that's what it takes to make MSAD11 feel better about not masking our kids. I don't take lightly the weight that this decision must be placing on each member of the school board. I know you want to do what's right, and I'm sure it makes your job harder when you see other school districts choosing to mandate masks. None of that should matter. If masks really worked, we'd be flooded with data from all over the world, and the CDC would have issued a mandate and made your jobs easy. When in doubt, especially in a free society, the decision should always be left to the parents. I know this isn't going to be an easy year. There are going to be teachers and kids testing positive and having to quarantine, but masks aren't going to keep it from happening anyway. Let's keep our kids up. Let's set our kids up for a great year and get them back on track to learning and playing catch up as they were meant to without wearing a face mask. Thank you, Ben Carr. Dear Chairperson Fless, Superintendent Hopkins, and honorable members of the MSAD11 School Board, I write to you today in regards to the proposal to once again require indoor masking in all MSAD11 buildings, including those who are vaccinated. I have completed my staff survey, but felt compelled to write in more detail. As an MSAD11 parent of both a 10th and 6th grader, an MSAD11 special educator who has been on the front lines of hybrid learning for the last 16 months, and as an MSAD11 taxpayer, I would like to formally register my opposition to any further mandatory masking of vaccinated individuals in our school buildings. Before I explain, let me first stipulate that as an employee, I am an absolute team player and will faithfully follow and enforce any rules or regulations approved by the board or Superintendent Hopkins without further question, debate, or complaint. Furthermore, let me say that I believe that all of you have our children's best safety, and best interests at heart, and that on the whole, I am extremely happy with our district's response to COVID and the challenges of hybrid learning. All that said, I must firmly state my opposition to requiring masks for vaccinated individuals on the grounds that such a policy would not only would be not only ineffective at achieving its stated goal, but in fact counterproductive, would not be substantially increase the safety of anyone, and would be, in my opinion, a demoralizing move to many of us. I'm so sorry. Many of us who have already done the one most effective thing that any of us can do to stop the spread of COVID, e.g., to get fully vaccinated. As I stated above, I believe requiring masks for vaccinated individuals will be completely ineffective at eliminating or even slowing down the rate of COVID spread in Maine. My basis for this claim is that to date, clinical trials have shown that the mRNA vaccines are 96% effective. Even today, with all the talk of Delta variant and how contagious it is, the best reporting that I could find states that unvaccinated individuals, currently around 98% of all new infections. 98%. If we remember that in Maine, roughly 70% of eligible Mainers are vaccinated, and that number becomes even more staggering. Yes, studies show that it is possible for breakthrough infections to then spread the virus. The number of breakthrough infections has been incredibly small. Again, I would say that a measure aimed at 2% of the overall problem, a group that already enjoys a 96% protection rate, will be completely ineffective, slowing the spread. In fact, it will have the opposite effect. Let me explain how. It is clear to me at this point that increased vaccination rates for everyone, but especially for our young people, is the one thing that could end the pandemic in a hurry. We learned last winter masks are not enough, and yet the message this recommendation sends to our young people is vaccines don't work. You still need a mask. If you want teens to get vaccinated, you need to make it worth their while. And while we hope concern for their own health would be enough for many, I got it so I don't have to wear a mask anymore, seems like a good reason as any if the goal is ending the pandemic. In behavioral science, a fundamental principle of changing people's behavior is through positive reinforcement. Unfortunately, under the proposal to require universal masking, we would eliminate the one strong carrot that we have left with our teens, since our school would essentially be the last place in their lives, other than medical offices, that has any masking or distancing requirements whatsoever. Lastly, with the demoralizing effect this type of rule could have, let me say that I think I speak not only just myself when I say that those of us who have followed the rules, taken this seriously, taken all the necessary precautions, and vaccinated ourselves and teens are tired of being asked to sacrifice our comfort and freedom so that those who, for whatever reason, have chosen not to do so can be protected. I work at the high school where every single student and staff person has been eligible for vaccination for several months. If they have not done so, it has been a conscious choice. The school nurse has my vaccination record as well as my daughter's record on file. I still have not heard one convincing reason why my daughter and I should be made to wear a mask in order for me to maintain my employment and for her to receive her education. My daughter has already spent her first year of high school in a mask. I'm absolutely against requiring her to do another now that she is fully vaccinated. The elementary schools could perhaps be treated as a separate question, since the vast majority of students are not currently eligible for vaccination. My son will not turn 12 until early September and will likely not be fully vaccinated until late October. I would be willing to accept that he needs to wear a mask until vaccinated, and he will accept that too because it makes sense and he can see a clear end point as he receives his 2 shots and waits his 2 weeks. As you know, this is a recommendation and not a guidance or a mandate, meaning the choice is ours to make. Other school districts, including Brewer and most recently Lewiston, have announced that masks will continue to be optional for vaccinated individuals in their school buildings. I would urge that MSAD11 make that same sensible decision. On the related question of pool testing, I'm completely in favor and would 100% volunteer for weekly testing myself. Respectfully, Patrick Caldwell. Good morning. I am writing to voice my opinion as a parent of 2 children in the district. I believe strongly that mask wearing should be left up to parents and parents alone. I am hoping that Gardner will follow Lewiston and Auburn's lead on this and make mask use optional. If not, we will need a remote option as our children will not be masked another year. Thank you, Jennifer and Adam Profeno. Superintendent Hopkins, I wanted to send you a copy of this email that I sent to the school board. While I know following CDC guidelines and mandatory mask wearing is a decision made by the school board, I wanted to let you know as a parent I support following CDC guidelines and mask mandates. See email below. Dear school board members, my name is Andrew Hopkins and I grew up in Gardner and attended MSAD11 schools from the time I was in kindergarten to when I graduated from Gardner Area High School in 2001. I feel fortunate to have grown up in this community, and after living out of state for about 13 years, I moved back here last summer with my wife and 2 sons and bought a house in South Gardner. This fall, my oldest will be starting the 2nd grade and my youngest will be starting pre-K. I also work as a special ed teacher in a neighboring school district. While I moved back here for one of the most unique and challenging school years this community has faced in recent times, I have been impressed with our experience with Laura E. Richards and the school district so far. I'm writing to you today in regards to the upcoming vote on Thursday night, whether to follow CDC recommendations and whether to require students to wear masks or not. I'm requesting that you please vote yes to follow CDC recommendations and to require students to wear masks when indoors. While this decision may not be popular amongst some people, I feel it is clearly the best decision. I will first explain I feel this way as I see it as one more precaution that will help keep schools maintain in-person learning if there is in-person learning. If there is one thing we can all agree on, overwhelmingly at this time, is that we want to have in-person learning to the greatest extent possible. As a parent and an educator, I will be the first to say that remote learning, while better than nothing at all, is still not as effective as in-person learning. I also feel that many who oppose mask wearing are not using the most reliable information to lead them to their conclusion. Unfortunately, people seem to be allowing their guidance on this decision to come from political ideologies, things that they read on Facebook, YouTube videos, and other poor sources of information. Below, I have included a link to over 40 peer-reviewed studies showing the effectiveness of masks at introducing transmission rates, as we are now seeing the Delta variant running rampant in certain areas of our country. I would like to add that masks being optional compromise is essentially putting our students at risk. One peer-reviewed study from the Journal of the American Medical Association, C-Link, shows wearing masks does more to prevent the person who is wearing the mask from spreading the virus to others than protecting them from others. This study shows that wearing masks reduces exhaled droplets from the wearer of the masks by 50 to 70%. While masks are not perfect, evidence shows they reduce the risks for those around the person wearing them. Having classmates in the same room not wearing masks unnecessarily increases the risks of an outbreak and puts my children who are not yet eligible to be vaccinated at an increased risk of having COVID, as masks protect others around my children more than my children themselves. While I respect the opinion of others who claim it is their constitutional right to choose whether they have their child wear a mask often based on poor arguments as supported by numerous court decisions. The key thing is that they are disregarding is the rights and liberties of others. Choosing to not wear masks disregards the rights of others to have their children receive an education in the safest environment possible based on quality and credible information. It is a very minimally intrusive practice to ensure the safety of students in the district and increase the odds that in-person learning will take place throughout the school year. In closing, I urge you to please vote to follow the CDC guidelines and require mandatory mask wearing for students and staff. Thank you for your time. Andrew Hopkins. Good afternoon. I finished filling out the survey that was sent along to parents and guardians. We are in disbelief and shocked at receiving the survey. While we appreciate giving input on the current health crisis, we are not epidemiologists. School-aged children have proven their resiliency and willingness to adapt to change. It would seem that our administrators and school board members would have it in their best interest to protect our vaccinated and unvaccinated children and staff without hesitation, especially when no remote learning will be offered. We do not understand how you can mandate mask wearing on a school bus, but not in a classroom setting at capacity with no physical distancing. This is a clear contradiction and unsafe. For families that have sacrificed and been vigilant to protect each other and themselves over the last 18 months, it would feel like a major disappointment and stress-inducing scenario to send our children back into a setting that is unsafe. Masks work. We should be following CDC guidelines to protect our children while we hope there is a return to normalcy and children can attend school free of precautions. The time is clearly not now. The percentage of parents and guardians that have medical training in epidemiology and will reply to your survey are extremely low. We expect that our district will follow CDC guidelines to protect our students that are vulnerable and unvaccinated. Thanks for your attention and thought. Kristen Peacock. Good evening. I'm writing to urge you to leave the decision of masks to the parents. As a parent, I have many concerns with the masks, not only for my children, but also others. I know many children who wore the same mask day after day without being washed. These masks are constantly fiddled with, dropped, walked on, stuffed in the bottom of gross bags. And when a kid uses the bathroom and doesn't wash their hands, then you know. Having all that bacteria and moisture from breathing, chewing on and spitting is not healthy. My next concern is with masks on, facial expressions, lip movements, and such are very limited. As a mom of a special needs child who depends a lot on facial expressions and a hard of hearing child who needs to see lips, it has been concerning with how much they are limited by having these taken away from them. Then I think of the little kids who are learning emotions and lip movements for speech. There's just so much missed when half your face is covered. I know for myself and my daughter, we both get headaches when we wear a mask for more than an hour. That makes it hard to concentrate in school and farther hinders learning. I could go on, but I won't. I just respectfully plead for you to leave the choice to the parents. Thank you, Christina Hobbs. Dear Chairwoman Fless, members of the school board, and Superintendent Hopkins, a few weeks ago I wrote to Chairwoman Fless urging a vote to require masks for the unvaccinated in school as the COVID-19 Delta variant is increasing across the country and in our own communities. I now urge you to vote for masking for all in MSAD11 schools. As a parent of 2 young children who are presently ineligible to receive a COVID-19 vaccine due to their age, I believe universal masking is the best protection we have to provide a safe, stable learning environment for all children. Teachers and staff in our district, in the presence of highly transmissible COVID-19 Delta variant and the ongoing pandemic. Making masks optional may seem like an approach that pleases both sides, for or against masking, but it does not accomplish the purpose of protecting all students. Teachers and staff, and in turn ultimately reduces their use to merely a distraction in the classroom. This is particularly true in younger age groups where children will inevitably struggle to understand why some people are protecting themselves and others are not. Please vote to support making for all, as is recommended by federal and local CDC, public health officials, and American Academy of Pediatrics, so that we can return to in-person learning without risking our children's health and that of their families. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration and for your service to our community. Sarah Rhines. Hi, my name is Candace Smith. I am a student that goes to Gardner Regional Middle School. The reason I'm writing this to you is that I want to ask you to make masks required for all students and staff. I don't feel safe in a building with my peers unmasked. My reason being is that I have family members who have compromised immune systems or are more prone to COVID-19, vaccine or not. So I am urging you to please consider what I have said. I hope all of you have a great night, and I wish you and your families the best of health. Sincerely, Candace Smith. That was a lot of reading, so I thank you for your indulgence. At this time, we will entertain public comments for items that are on the agenda. I'm going to ask if there's a volunteer on the board to be our timekeeper. Okay. Jim? We're asking for you to have keep your comment to 2 minutes, not longer than 2 minutes, if possible. And Jim, you'll wave your hand or do something really obvious when we get to 2 minutes? Okay. And if you've already spoken, let others speak, and then we can come back around to you. I ask that we be respectful, that we honor each other's opinions and thoughts, and remember that we're here for children, and that's what our school board does. We always speak respectfully and kindly to each other. So I would ask that we would have that same participation from the audience. So who would like to go first, if anyone? Yes. So I would like you to go. I'm sorry, I forgot to say, stand up, go to the podium, state your name and the community that you reside within. Oh, that's true. Yes, if you would like to speak, get in line. That's a great idea. Thank you, Matthew. I would never have thought of that.
Hello, my name is Maurice Soucy. This is my first school board meeting. My children attend the Gardner Middle School and Pittston School. Like I said, this is my first school board meeting, and I got here a couple minutes late, and I'm kind of upset that nobody thanked the nice police officer that's here, devoting his time to be here, following his orders. I would think that would be a standard thing in a school board meeting, but this is my first one. It bothers me that 15.4% of you up there have a mask on that isn't even rated for coronavirus. So I guess that's why it's in the theater here today, because this is for theatric response. I mean, I'm looking at this guy with a mask on that came out of a box that said, "Not safe for coronavirus." We've already learned that people that have been vaccinated spread this virus, that you guys are so scared about, that you guys don't want to go teach our kids about. Why is that? What do you get out of this? I just don't know. This is my first school board meeting, and I'm so disappointed. The woman in the blue that was talking when I first got here between Mask and Blondie was up here talking, and anybody asked her a question, she just said, "Oh, I don't know." Where did you think you were going? In my job, I'm an independent contractor. If I can't do something for somebody, that goes back on me. And yet you give no response to why you can't give an answer to something, because the CDC didn't give you that memo. The people in the United States do not care about the CDC. 15 seconds. I appreciate your time, and thank you for bringing me up here, and thank this officer for being here, because he is the hero in this room.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Sorois, and I live in Pittston, and I have 3 girls that go to school in the Gardner School District. I know, because I'm so tall. Is that better? Usually I'm pretty loud, so I don't know. Sorry, my 2 minutes is probably going. And it's dark. I am just here because I have 3 children, like I said, and I am concerned that they're going to have to wear a mask this year during their days at school. And it just seems crazy to me that that is something that's even being considered, because according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, the children are 99.75% safe from COVID. So it doesn't seem like 0.25% is enough of a risk to really have them be wearing a mask all day. And that seems absolutely crazy to me that that is even being considered at all. So that really bothers me a lot. And also, it's one of those things where I'd like to share something that is an experience with our family. My girls have a lot of anxiety when they begin to start school. And to add this extra anxiety onto them I just feel that it's crazy and it's awful. You know, there's a lot of tears and anxiety and fear at our household right before we start school. And to add that extra onto that is very stressful for us at our home, and also for the school teachers that have to deal with them crying and are upset a lot. So, you know, I'm not saying that other people can't wear a mask. It's fine if they do. If that makes them feel comfortable, then that's great, and they're more than welcome to do so. But please don't make my children wear a mask. Please give the parents the choice, because I believe that we have that right. Thank you.
All right, don't start me yet. Cutting out a quarter of my speech here for time. Hi, my name is Sandra Martin. I live here in Gardner. We are here to discuss the safety of students and staff who are returning to school with regard to COVID-19 and its variants. I can imagine some parents are terrified, but the fact remains that these viruses are roughly less than 1% deadly for most people, even less than that for children. We're being told there's a 72% uptick in cases here, which sounds alarming, but has amounted to 96 hospitalizations in Maine recently. This is in the whole state, and I can tell you, I have like a yard and a house that could fit 96 people fairly comfortably, and it's not even a big house. We have not been told any specifics about these 96, but we do know, according to the CDC, that the top 2 contributors to COVID death were obesity and fear and anxiety. Now about children specifically. Maine Mortality Database lists leading causes of death in school-aged children to be unintentional accidents, cancer, and heart disease. After that, suicide. The 3rd leading cause of death for children aged 5 to 9 in Maine was suicide. A causal link study performed by the NIH examined risk factors for suicide related to COVID-19 and said that perceived burdensomeness, thwarted belongingness, stress sensitivity, cognitive errors such as magnification, catastrophic thinking, and arbitrary inference are likely behind these risk factors for suicide. These children are effectively being manipulated and isolated to death by a mainstream media with distinct political leanings who tell them they should be afraid of the air they breathe and not being socially distanced enough. It should relieve parents to know that the New York Times recently reported that children have a far greater chance of dying on their way to school in a car accident than dying of COVID. Americans today are fighting for their basic constitutional rights, including the right to make health care decisions for themselves and their children. I understand that fear is at an all-time high, but the science and the statistics both create a clear picture. The mental and emotional toll of COVID-19 mandates outweigh the benefits of masks. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Joe Eastman. I live in Pittston. I didn't prepare anything for this, so I hope I don't go over 2 minutes. If I do, throw a water bottle at me. That's fine. It's very dark up here. I'd like to know why the school board is considering masks first and not no masks first. And I know last year we had masks, we had social distancing, we had learning at home, and we still had COVID pop up in our community. So it seems like those procedures are not working. It seems like these kids are still going to get together on Friday and Saturday nights. That's where it seems to be that the contact tracing indicates that they're getting it. So masks in school or social distancing isn't going to solve that. I think we all need to realize that this COVID thing is never going to end. No matter what we do, masks, vaccines, or whatever, I know several people who've been vaccinated, and it seems like COVID-19 still pops up, and they're still able to transmit it. I'm also wondering if our survey even matters to the board, because this is my first school board meeting. I apologize. I never came here before. I probably should have. Thank you all for stepping up and being board members, because it's something I've never done, and that's pretty brave. But I also, I work for the federal government. I'm in the military, and I still don't, I kind of question the government itself. So call me conspiracy theory or whatever. But one of the other people you read in the email mentioned a carrot. Usually what goes along with that is we've offered the carrot, now it's time to go to the stick. Let's hope that we don't have to go to the stick, because that would be really unfortunate for our community. And I think it's sad that our community and the nation is being divided over masks, vaccines, black, white, sexual orientation. I don't think any of that stuff should matter. Thank you very much. Thank you for not throwing a water bottle.
Hi, my name is Ashley Healy, and I'm a resident of Gardner. My daughter is going into the 5th grade. I wasn't sure I was going to speak here tonight, but I think it's important that you know that last year my kid spent more time at home because she self-harmed herself than she did because she was in quarantine. So the lady who spoke about suicide and other things, those should be on top of mind. Kids in our district need to make that choice for themselves. Parents need to make that choice. It's my constitutional right as a parent to make my kids' choices. So I suggest that you think about all of the other issues that you are causing when you are making your vote tonight. I understand the concerns, but my kid's been bullied in this district, so maybe focus should be put on other things than this. So maybe we shouldn't worry so much about what my concern is for my child, and you worry about providing my kid with a public education.
Hi, my name's Chris Soto. I'm a resident of Gardner. My wife and I have 2 daughters who are entering the 5th and 2nd grade this year. I wanted to make 2 quick points, one as a parent and one as someone who does survey research, actually. So as a parent, what we most want for our kids this year is, as Superintendent Hopkins said, is for them to be in school, face-to-face learning as much as possible. And as the superintendent laid out, if there is a mask mandate in place, that means fewer children are going to be quarantined every time there is a positive test. Kids are going to spend more of their time in the classroom rather than the kids and parents scrambling at home to try to figure out what to do about it. And then my second point, so like I said, in my day job, I do a bunch of survey research, and I just want to make sure I'm reading the survey results correctly. But there were 3 bars. 2 of them represented parents who supported a mask mandate, either without or with conditions. And the orange bar represented folks who opposed the mandate. I just wanted to point out that in total, there were about 52% of parents and about 75% of teachers and staff who supported a mask mandate in some form, and there were less than half of the parents who actually opposed the mandate, and there were only about a quarter of the teachers and staff who opposed the mandate. And so I just wanted to make sure it's clear to everybody what the balance of the public sentiment actually is among parents and among the folks who are actually interacting with kids in the schools. All right, thank you.
Okay. I wasn't planning on speaking in this meeting at all. This is my first board meeting that I've been to. My name is Lily DeVersi. I'm currently, I go to school at Gardner. I've been at Gardner my whole life. I play sports. I'm in clubs, all that kind of stuff. I have done my part, I feel, in this whole COVID and pandemic. I've quarantined when I've been supposed to. I've social distanced. I've worn my mask. I've complied. I've lost weeks out of my lacrosse season. I've lost weeks out of my soccer season. I wasn't at school for over half the year. I was online. It's really disheartening because I thought that doing everything that everyone was telling me to, I'm fully vaccinated. I thought that that would allow me to not have to wear a mask, and I had hopes that maybe we would be moving forward. And I thought that maybe you would like to hear from someone who's actually going to the district. As I said, I wasn't planning on talking or anything, so I'm really nervous. But I was quarantined 5 times last year, and my mom's a nurse, so I see it all when she's at home taking phone calls, and I see how hard that is. And I would really like to not be forced to wear a mask. It's really disheartening, as I said. I was looking forward to having a somewhat normal year, and after doing everything that I've been told, and I had really high hopes that maybe this would be over. Maybe that's silly, I don't know, but I just hope that you would take that into consideration. I know there's a lot of people that feel like our efforts have gone kind of just under the eyes and minds of everyone else who's making decisions for us. But, yeah, I guess that's all I got. But, okay, thank you.
Excuse me, did you say your name was Lindsay? Lily. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Jacob Frost of Gardner. And first off, I want to talk about the pooled testing. One of the fundamental problems with that, it does test for the people that are asymptomatic, but if you get one person in a group of 20 that comes positive back in that test, those results are sent out to the state and they're reported in all these CDC numbers. So the one case that's positive now turns all 20 of those to positive cases that are getting reported, and they're going to turn this into a big cycle. If all the schools in the state are doing this, it's going to make the numbers grow, the case numbers. And then it's going to push more pressure on you guys. It's going to put more pressure on the public to push more mask mandates, vaccine mandates, and I think that's a fundamental problem with that. It might work, but the way that it's going to be turned into is going to cause a problem. I also have 2 young kids at home that did wear masks last year, and they get disgusting. Just with them going into Target or something and walking down the aisles, they get all wet and gross, and it's just a breeding ground for bacteria. But there's been studies that show that the masks are effective, but after being worn for about 20 minutes or so, when they get damp like that, they lose all their ability to protect. And they still spread all the droplets, and that's why in a medical profession, they might be used for half an hour to an hour at most, and then they're changed out for another one. It's not really practical to be doing that with our students, and having like elementary school kids being changed out every half an hour or so. The other part is that the children aren't as prone to getting the virus. They lack ACE2 receptors, and that is what the virus latches onto inside the nostrils and causes you to be infected. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Superintendent Hopkins, the school board, teachers and administrators who came tonight. We as parents and we as members of the community repose a great deal of confidence in your decision-making abilities, in your leadership skills, in your ability to make informed decisions for the best good of our students. And I think you saw a very convincing presentation from Superintendent Hopkins, and that is drawing upon information given from the CDC and from the Department of Education. And I think for now, right now, with cases on the rise in our state, and with the Delta variant most recently testing as 100% of the new cases that are arising, it is critical that we remain masked for now, whether we are vaccinated or not, to make sure that we are keeping the greatest number safe in school, learning, and on task. And I look forward to the day when our vaccination numbers are so high and our illness numbers are falling, so that it becomes a matter of personal preference and the public health is not affected by personal preference. But I feel so strongly that right now it is critical that we toe the line and we focus on putting our children's education and presence in the school first. Thank you.
What was your name?
My name is Ange Pitteroff. I have 2 kids at Pittston Randolph School.
Hi, I'm Kim Eastman. I live in Pittston, and I have 2 kids at Gardner High School. Pre-2020, I would have said this CDC has our best interest at heart. I no longer believe that based on what they have said, the lack of science that they've used or supplied to back up what they say. It has forced me to research on my own because a lot of the stuff that they were saying did not make sense to me. As far as someone saying they had a peer review study saying that masks did work, I can also show you a peer-reviewed study where masks don't work. And not only do they don't work, they also cause a lot of physical and psychological harm to our kids. Such as shortness of breath, increased lactate concentration, decline in pH levels, acidosis, toxicity, inflammation, self-contamination, increase in the area in stress hormones, levels of adrenaline, increased muscle tension, and immunosuppression. So those are just a few of the things that are mask cause that are doing the exact opposite of why we want to force our kids to wear them to supposedly prevent. Psychological issues are activation of flight or fight stress response, chronic stress conditions, fear, mood disturbance, insomnia, fatigue, compromised cognitive performance. Again, I don't see how wearing a mask for our kids in school with all these consequences is going to help them if they're in there 5 days a week. If they can't concentrate and they're getting headaches, which my daughter will get headaches, as will I, in less than an hour of wearing a mask. I also have studies from a surgeon that says why masks don't work. So please just don't take the CDC's word for it. Do your research.
Hi, my name is Rick Ducharme. I got 2 kids in the Gardner School District. I live in Gardner. Just purchased a house here last year. Been here for a couple years with my daughter. Had nothing but amazing things to say about you guys once I came here. You guys did wonders for my daughter. That being said, I work in the healthcare field. I work daily with people with COVID. I set them up. I go into their homes. I run a logistics team that does this for people. I work with people every day that have COVID. The masks that you guys are wearing do nothing. N95s, the mask that he's wearing, do something. The mask that you want my kid to wear every day does nothing for them. It will do nothing for them. I hate to tell you that, but that is the truth. And unfortunately, the CDC has flip-flopped more this year than I've seen anything. And I work with this every day in the healthcare field. I work for a national healthcare company. The benefits outweigh if you're wearing a N95. N95, absolutely, I understand that. But not every kid is going to be wearing an N95. They're going to be wearing a regular cloth mask, which is going to get dirty. And the regular blue mask that you see surgeons wear lasts for 20 minutes. Then they're worthless. If you're going to ask kids to wear that all day long, it's going to be worthless within 20 minutes. Never mind when they have runny noses and everything else that happens. You ask them to go out and play on a football field, not wearing a mask, but yet they can come into the school and wear a mask. What's the point? It's all right for them to go play sports. It's all right for them to be outside of school, not wearing a mask, hanging out with their friends. But, gee, they come in this school, they better wear a mask. This is not going to stop the spread. I understand you guys are in a hard spot, but understand it also stops them from learning because they're not going to see facial expressions. So I appreciate everything, but understand, do your research on your own. Do not rely on the CDC. Thank you.
My name is Jamie Stone. I have 3 kids in the area schools. Our kids have been through enough. Let them breathe.
My name is Zach Montel. I have a daughter that's going to be entering the school system, and I think it should be a parent's choice whether we wear masks or not, just like it should be everyone's choice if we get the vaccine or wear the mask. I think that's what this country was founded upon, was freedom of choice, and I think that is slowly being eroded away, chip by chip, and I think we've played by the rules kind of for long enough, and if we keep on essentially submitting, there's got to be an end date at some point. And I feel like the more that we just do what we're told, I hear a lot of scare tactics up here, like the quarantining, if people aren't masking, and if people would just get the vaccines. And it just seems like we're being scared a little bit by the CDC, which really shouldn't have any authority. It's basically a kind of a guidance, and we're using it almost like a governing system. A lot of these people said you shouldn't have family over for Christmas and Thanksgiving. You shouldn't hug relatives. If we want to keep on going that way, we can, but I feel like it's further dividing us. And I think you see a lot of people here speaking out. I think the people that want freedom of choice have been very vocal. And I think as a school board, you need to take into account not just your opinions, but the opinions of the people that you are serving. You realize that you are serving us, and we are grateful for your service, but we just want to be heard. And I guess the last thing I would want to say is that the CDC seems to be putting a lot of ideas in people's heads, but that's the only opinion that we can hear, because everything else is labeled misinformation, it's taken off the internet, it's taken off TV. So if there were other opinions that were present, maybe we'd be on a level playing field, but we only have one opinion that's being heard at the moment. So, thanks.
My name is Lisa Levitt. I am a resident of West Gardner. I have children going into Gardner Middle School. I am a medical professional. It's a shame that the CDC has been politicized and that the science is not trusted. I agree that you shouldn't trust just one source, but multiple scientific organizations have done the research. And we don't know all the answers on the first day. It may seem like things are flip-flopping, and that's because we are learning as we go with this novel virus. But there are a lot of things that are rooted in science. I know that one woman here quoted the American Academy of Pediatrics about how
children aren't affected by the virus, but that very organization that is all about children recommends universal masking. I know that the not making masking universal folks are very vocal here, but I would strongly encourage the board to take into account the science, the CDC, the HWO, the American Academy of Pediatrics that are recommending universal masking. My children mask when they're indoors, and not a week goes by that I have not had a parent contact me and say, thank you for having your child masked. It made my child more comfortable seeing them wear masks. My children mask when they're indoors. And I encourage the board to look at the science and do what's best for our children and understand that things are changing and that this isn't universal masking for life. But we need to do what's best for our children in our community to keep them in school. And if you're not going to have the remote academy option, we need to do everything we can to limit that quarantining. So please take the science into account.
I'm a resident of Gardner. I have 3 children that go to the school system. Not 3, 2 great nieces and a nephew. And they are precious souls to me. And I watched last year and I participated in filling in the gap when their mother, a teacher, needed us. We stood in the gap. To think about you guys masking these guys again is outrageous. The statistics, the percentages are clear. The kids are not at risk. You guys do a great job. You do a hard job. My niece is a teacher herself. I have great respect for what you do. But this is about fear. And we need to stop with the fear-mongering.
It should be about our children.
It should be about our children and their well-being. Psychologically, I watch them struggle. It's unnecessary. That's all I have to say. Joyce Sawyer. And Trump won 2020.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Shea, and I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but my husband and I have 5 children, one that just graduated from the high school, 2 more at the high school, and I have 2 young ones. My daughter is going to be going into 3rd grade. She went to LER for 1st grade, but when COVID hit, she has asthma. She cannot be in a mask all day, and so we homeschool. I'm homeschooling my 2 youngest. My other 2 that are in high school, they will not come if they have to be in a mask all day, every day, 5 days a week. They need to breathe air. It's not healthy for them. So I just ask that you really take that into consideration. I don't feel that the kids should be wearing masks all day, 5 days a week. That's basically it. I think it should be up to the parents to choose for their children. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christopher Shea. We have 5 children, 3 teenagers. The main thing I want to do right now is thank all the teachers for going through the trenches all last year and a half, regardless of what side they're on, because they're in the mix every day, and I know they got the kids' best interests in mind. So I just want to say thank you to them all. The main thing that I question is the constitutional rights that are being taken away from us. That and the rights as parents to be the parent. The school doesn't need to be the parent. The parent should be able to judge whether or not their child should be able to wear a mask or not, regardless of vaccination status or anything. I mean, there's a lot of people who died just protect the Constitution. They're not here anymore. I highly doubt they'd be wanting to put a mask on. It really disturbs me that our constitutional rights are being taken away so easily. And I don't want to be a bunch of sheep just following. It's not right. I want to thank all your time and the board, too, as well. Thank you.
Hold on just a second. I'm having a problem with my phone.
Oh, good. I get extra minutes.
No, you don't.
My name is Bethany Peluso. I have 2 kids at LER. First, I have to say I have all the respect in the world for teachers. The school is phenomenal. But moving forward, I think that between people's beliefs, their different beliefs, wherever their backgrounds are, whether they choose masking or not, I believe that should be a parent's choice. My kids personally don't like wearing masks. They get home from school and the first thing they do is they throw it on the floor. We try and make it fun with choices of masks, but they don't like it. And at the elementary school level, you know, my youngest comes home and his mask is soaked. It's dirty, it's nasty, and I take that thing off your face because it can't be healthy. I know it can't. And I understand that in certain situations, you know, at a hospital, like some of the folks have said, they do have a benefit. But when the CDC goes back and forth, you know, with wearing, not wearing it, we do lose our confidence. So I think at the end of the day, it has to come down to a parent's choice and what they feel is best for their family. So, and then I just had a question about the pool testing and the swabbing, and I don't know if there's any long-term data on the effects that is in those swabs, what that's going to do to parents and how effective that pool testing would be. So I would just like to know more information on that, so I guess I'll just follow that on myself. But so I just encourage you to leave that decision to the parents. So thank you.
Excuse me, I'm a little short. My name is Victoria Fisher. I live in Gardner. I have 4 kids. 2 have already gone through, 2 that are going through the school district right now. I'm also a Gardner graduate, so I love our community very much, and I appreciate all of you. But listening to everybody tonight, one thing just keeps ringing true, is that everyone here wants to do what's best for their children. Whether it's to wear masks, get vaccinations, or to not wear masks and not get vaccinated, it's their right, their choice for whatever they feel that is right for their family. My family is mixed. My family has people that want the vaccination and the masks, and I have family that don't believe in it, that wants to not have the masks or the vaccinations. So I guess all I can say is when you sit there and you make your decisions tonight, remember basically what everyone's saying here is they want to make the choice of what's more comfortable for their families. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christy Woodcock. I have 3 children that go to the MSAD11 school district, and I'm also a first grade teacher for the school district. So I've been in it with the littles in the masks all of last year, and this is tough. I saw my own children struggle emotionally, mentally through it all. And through the summer, I've seen everyone flourish. I've seen children be able to interact again. And from the teaching part of it, they need to see faces. They need to be able to, they move a lot, they're movers. They need to be able to breathe. And I need to be able to teach them how to make the sounds that they're producing when they're learning to read and write. And I love this school district, and I will do whatever is best to keep our students safe, and I want my own children safe. I just really feel that it should be a parent's choice, and I just want to thank you all for the time you've put in, because it's been a year and it just keeps going on us. But I wasn't prepared to talk tonight, but I just wanted to come up and say that as someone on the inside, not only as a parent, but as an educator for the littles, that it's been hard, and I would like to see them be mask-free if their parents want them to be. So that's it.
Hi, my name is Rachel Pracker. I'm a PA. I've been in healthcare for 10 years, and I have 2 children that go to Helen Thompson. I was not prepared to speak today. I just want to show that there is support for mandate of universal masking. we had, unfortunately, because of daycare, mostly, we had quite a few quarantines, and my daughter was out of school intermittently throughout the year, and that had a dramatic impact on her education. And unfortunately, you know, I'm a parent, I'm not a teacher, and I don't always know how to pick up the slack. And, you know, it's something, again, where the data of the parents of, you know, encouraging, I think the blue, sorry, I'm getting nervous, you know, that greatly outweighs where there's a lot of support. Unfortunately, I think there's just been a lot of one-sided opinion here tonight. But, yes, I'll keep it short and sweet. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Andrew Pitteroff. I got 2 kids at Randolph Pittston School. I'm a member of the Maine Army National Guard. I've been working in conjunction with the Maine CDC since July 2020. My comments, we're not connected. This is me as a parent talking right now. But yeah, I see the numbers. I've delivered testing supplies to some of the schools here in our community. And just the numbers I see at work, day in and day out, if you don't want to have Zoom kindergarten, this is what we got to do. That's it.
My name is Wesley Holland. I live in Gardner. My firstborn is going to enter pre-K in just a few weeks. I'm the pastor of a church in town, and when we started opening up and doing things, the leadership of the church, we had this whole sort of array of things we could do. All of the recommendations or all of the options of things we could do. And some of them are very strict, and some of them are not strict at all. You know, we could go. There's a whole spectrum of things that we could do, and the temptation for me or for us is, well, we got to do as much as we possibly can, or else if an outbreak happens, it's our fault. And sometimes that would push us to maybe want to do more than we should. And so I know what you're kind of going through, except you're on a much bigger scale than me. I would urge you to look at all the recommendations you have and say, now how many of these things really work and are really logical and would really be helpful, and how many of them are just more things we can do to make sure we're not responsible if an outbreak occurs. And so my final opinion is I would prefer that there was no mask mandate, and my pledge then as a parent is that if there's an outbreak, I won't hold you responsible. Thanks.
During the public comment, I received a couple of more thrill shares that I will share with you. Hello, my son will be beginning pre-K this fall at Helen Thompson School. I am concerned of the possible psychological effect long-term for younger kids who are just learning social and emotional skills, which is a huge part of education at this age. Kids have such a low rate of possible mortality with COVID that the CDC has reported that it seems as though this is more of a concern for staff and a personal choice for masking at school. Is there a possibility to allow staff and community to have different decisions officially made? Everyone should be allowed the least restrictive environment, which I believe has been a huge goal of our education system and should be followed in this situation as well. Please vote to allow for the personal decision of all. Thank you, Jennifer Frost. And secondly, from Jennifer Profeno, we have an 8th grader and a fourth grader. We do not support universal masking. We believe it should be up to parents and parents only. believe that's all that I have. All right. So the next thing on our agenda is whether to mandate mask wearing or not. And at this point, the board will do its work. It's not our practice to have exchange with the public while the board is doing its work. We've given the opportunity for public comment, so I'm going to just close that portion of this meeting, and the board will do its work. I'm not exactly sure the best way. We don't sit like this typically. We're in a nice horseshoe so we can see each other. So, and I'm left-handed, so I tend to look left. So if I don't look right, Veronica, do what Pat does, pinch my elbow, because I have a natural way of doing things. Anyway, so we need to start the conversation. And I'm wondering, Rob Munzing, do I need to pass the mic around? Should people talk really loud? What's the best? Pass the mic. So, Pat, if you want to pass your mic that way, and I'll pass my mic this way. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Rob. I'm sorry. Oh, that's an idea. Oh, that one's on a cord. Okay.
Well, I'm Jim Lothridge from Pittston. I believe that parents have a right to make some decisions, but don't get too excited yet. But your right to make a decision ends where it affects my grandchildren, and I'm very much in favor of masks at this time. When they can get vaccinated, and I think it will be soon, I certainly hope so. I'm vaccinated, my wife and I, we're both well over 70, and we got vaccinated as quickly as possible. And my granddaughters, I have one in California, one here, and one in New York. They'll get a vaccine as quickly as it's available, and I'm hoping it's available soon. That's when you can start making choices as to whether you do or don't want to vaccinate, or do or don't want to wear a mask. When my granddaughters are safe, and I would hope all of your grandchildren, all your children and grandchildren are safe because they've been fully vaccinated. So that's my general take on the issue. Thank you.
Good evening. First of all, I wanted to thank Lily for her comment. It was very articulate. You did a great job, young lady, and I appreciate it. And I've said this a few times in the past, that I think if you're trying to persuade somebody to think like you or come around to your way of thinking, ridiculing them and being disrespectful is not the way to do it. So thank you very much. And same to the pastor. I appreciate your comments as well. I am not a proponent of masking or pool testing. My son is in this district, and I personally was witness to what he experienced last year, as many of your kids experienced the same things, I'm sure. I think it's relatively hypocritical to make children wear masks in school and then let them go participate outside in a full contact sport, let's say like football. It doesn't send the right message. I think that it's a parent's right to make the decision for their children, and I understand that there are some people that think that your right to make the choice is infringing on their right and safety of their child. But if you want your children to wear masks, in my opinion, they should wear a mask. If teachers are concerned, they should wear a mask. It's up to parents, and certainly adults can make their own choice. So I am not a proponent of either, like I said, pool testing or a mask mandate. Barring a statewide mask mandate, that is, okay? It's different if it comes to that point. And I think there's sort of there's a reason that we haven't gotten one yet. It's kind of peculiar to me. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
Sure, I will. Thank you. This is cheating a little bit, but I just want to thank everybody's here tonight for a very polite and civil listening and speaking session. If anybody's been reading the local papers, it has not always been this civil, and I think we all appreciate that. So thank you. I am actually an interim board member. I was not elected to this seat. I was appointed by the Gardner City Council to fill in a vacancy. So I sit in a weird position. I'm not up here with a mandate from a group of parents or neighbors. So I've been thinking very hard this week about what is the purpose of a school board in this scenario? What's our mission? What are we supposed to do? And we're here to provide a setting that allows children to thrive in their education. That's our job. We're not medical professionals. And what does that mean? It means at a minimum, we have a responsibility to provide a safe space, both physically and emotionally, provide excellent staff and educators that can provide them that education. And without those things in place, and all the support things that go around it, like food service, we can't even bring children up to the emotional state where they're even able to learn. We have to hit those minimums. And I also want to acknowledge the ridiculousness of this moment, because we have a federal government that recommends but does not mandate certain actions. We have a federal CDC that recommends but does not mandate certain actions. We have state and local government that recommend but do not mandate actions. And that torch has been passed to this table. And these are all excellent people, but we are the lowest on the poll with the least resources and the least information. So what shall we do as a community? So in listening to everybody who got up to speak tonight, and also reading through all the letters and all the messages that came in, a theme came out that I think we should address right away, because I think there's an issue on the table, and we're maybe focused on the wrong one about do we mask or do we not mask. There are consequences of a positive test case within the school that are outside our hands. We don't get to pick. So when we go back to school this fall, there will be people, students and staff, who are COVID positive. And as soon as they're COVID positive and they test out that way, the choice for the school is, do we send you home, because everyone around you is masked and they can stay, or do we send your whole classroom home in quarantine? So back to the essential question of what the school board's supposed to do. We're supposed to get the best education for the students in the district. And that's a really heavy scale to balance. So how do I get the most education days per student in the year? Do we ask people to be uncomfortable and mask, knowing there are certainly folks in the community who are going to struggle with that a lot harder? Or do we not do that? And then as soon as we have a positive case pop up, let's pretend this whole section is one classroom and one of you tests positive and nobody's masking, you're all gone. That's a whole lot of education days lost. And just lastly, I think you brought up football a minute ago, which was really kind of interesting. I was digging around trying to educate myself a little bit for the meeting tonight. Anybody here want to guess how many kids die playing football in the U.S. each year? 11. And how many kids died from COVID in the U.S. last year? 400. So within a school system, when you play football, we don't recommend a helmet, a mouth guard, knee pads, shoulder pads, EMS personnel standing by, strict guidelines about contact. And yet all we're asking, to bring people back and let us keep the most kids in the classroom the most days is a single thin piece of cloth. It doesn't matter particularly if it works or not. It doesn't. It means we can keep your kids in the school, not at your homes, not missing their education. There is not going to be remote learning. So I haven't made my mind up. I want to listen to what the rest of the board has to say, but when I balance those two things about what's the reasonable assumption of risk and how do we fulfill our mission, it's something I want to think about really hard. Thank you.
Matt Lilliebridge. I'm from West Gardner. I have a son in Helen Thompson. And Colin, I'd like to thank you for your comments, and Maddie and everyone else. And I counted 23 people who got up and spoke, and I want to say about 33 if you take the letters. And I got notes on everybody, and I appreciate you for getting up, and especially for Lily. I didn't want to embarrass you as you were walking off, but as a student, you got a stake in the game. I appreciate it. I'm kind of like Jim when it comes to, I agree with parental choice, but the parental choice only goes so far because it's out of self-interest. And as we already said, we're worried about roughly 2,000 students across the district. And so it's a bigger picture. And the reason there's no mandates from federal, local, state is because there's a lack of moral courage, plain and simple. So most things happen at the local level, and that's where the real governing takes place. And so, I sympathize with people who have issues with masks. My son has ADHD and anxiety, still wears his mask. And he's going to be in 5th grade, and he's getting better with it. But he got way more out of his in-class learning from March through June than he did on the computer. We took his computer away from him because ADHD, yeah, he had a great teacher, but he focused on it for 2 minutes. And then it was YouTube and all this other stuff. So we just sent it back to the school. He went from possibly going to be retained in 4th grade. We met with Mrs. Gould, his teacher, great support. But he improved so much between March and June that he's going into the 5th grade. And that's because he was in class, even with a mask on, 6 feet, all that other stuff. And, I understand, again, the issues with a mask, but there's also a problem with resiliency amongst kids. And there's a way to build it up by putting a few obstacles in their way. And again, if there's health issues, it's a different matter. But, everyone who has their issues, that's great. You make your choices that you want. Like the people who are not going to put their children on the bus, then the onus is on you to get your child to and from school every day. But my job as a board member is to make sure that I'm taking care of 2,000 or so students, especially my son, but everyone else's son and daughter as well. So most likely, I'll tell you, not convinced yet, but I'll be voting for masking.
My name is Teresa Garrett. I live in Pittston. I've worked for the district several years ago as a substitute teacher. Have family members who have worked for the district. I did come by a statistic that I wanted to share that I hadn't really heard anything about until I did a little bit of exploring other than Google. Is that the virus is actually down 59.3% since last August. I just happened to come upon this. I wanted to share that. I'm also a patriot. My ancestors and family members have fought for the freedom of this country. I don't want their blood to be in vain. I feel that we as Americans have the freedom and the right to choose what we want for our children. I also believe being in the classroom, especially elementary, that the children are really suffering. They're not learning, they're not seeing expressions from people. I feel so incredibly sad for the babies that have been born during this pandemic. They go out into public and all they see is people with a mask. I can't even imagine, and I hope that it doesn't cause any harm to them. But I can truly say that I've made up my mind. I am voting for the parents to make their own decision as to what they choose to mask or not mask. Thank you.
I really don't love public speaking. It's not my favorite thing, but I thought it was important to share another student's perspective. I am typically someone who will go to school whether I have a cold or not. I don't like missing out on my education. My mom has multiple times in the past, before COVID, told me that, Gwen, maybe you should stay home today. I'm like, no, I'm okay, and I'm pretty much falling asleep while standing up. She can tell that I probably will be sent home by second period by the nurse or one of my teachers, which has happened quite a few times, much to my dismay, because I love being in school. It's one of my, I love education. But I think it's very important to continue masking throughout this school year. I am here in an N95 because I believe in it. I think that we should continue to mask. indoors, I understand wanting to run out in sports. I do cross country. We're pretty socially distanced regardless, even on a normal year. So it's important to me to keep masking in school regardless of, I don't know what to say. I think it should be somewhat of a parent's choice, but it shouldn't have to come down to everyone being quarantined and, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. If it's between quarantining a group of people because they weren't wearing masks and they are unvaccinated, or if they weren't wearing masks, it's not worth them missing out on education because they aren't safe. So I think everyone should have to wear masks.
I'll go. Thank you. Good evening. I thank you all for coming. I think it goes without saying that regardless of how this vote goes in the next few minutes, many of us are going to walk out of the room feeling relieved, and many of us are going to walk out of the room feeling frustrated, confused, unheard, and I fully recognize my part in causing any of those emotions for anybody in this room and watching. I will for sure lose sleep, already have, over this in thinking that a decision has to be made that is not going to please everybody. With that said, I also made a promise to myself and a silent promise to my community that I was going to come today and remain open-minded, knowing that I have an opinion and feel strongly in that opinion, but wanted to remain open to the thoughts and words that everybody has shared in writing and in person. So thank you for being open in that. With that said, it has caused me great pause in my thinking, however, not to the point of switching over to a different side than I walked in with today. I fully agree with what you said, Cullen, as far as thinking about what it is our job as board members in this community. And I agree with what you said our job is, and I also feel that it's our job to implement a high-quality, free and appropriate education for our students and our staff. And with that comes risk, and with that comes choice. And I think it's a very slippery slope to start making requirements that aren't already written into contracts, policy, and law. Pat and Angela, your presentation and your survey and the data is hugely helpful and beneficial for me. Thank you for the time that you put into that. I respect the recommendations that you've made to us tonight. I can get behind many of them, but not all of them. So when it comes down to a vote, I feel confident that parents should have a say.
My name's Tony Veet. I'm a resident of Gardner, and you can probably see I'm going to come down on the side of the universal mask mandate, just to get that out there. I appreciate everybody coming out here, and I recognize that I'm on an opposing side from many. And I want to respect, I really appreciate people showing up for the board meeting. I mean, this is something we do every month or more often, and we really do appreciate public input. It's really valuable for us. I do take the presentation that Pat and Angela put together was really, I think draws, I can see that there's a close line, even as we look at people that want to support only parent choice and people that want to support only masking. We find that there is a close divide there. What Nicole was saying about risk and choice makes a lot of sense to me. I'm coming at it maybe from a little bit of a different view that with risk, I think it's good to have choice. We absolutely need to have that. I am looking at masks as maybe a compromise in that sense, that it is a lower risk option than mandating vaccines. I'm vaccinated myself and I'm still wearing a mask. Oh, sorry? Missed it. So what I really wanted to get at, though, in terms of what we're looking at that's working and statistics and numbers and this kind of thing, I look at last year. And I look at last year and I know that, that our protocols worked for us. And I know that because I was concerned when we were talking about returning to school full-time, which I'm really excited about this year, and I really want to make every effort to preserve that 5 days a week. That's when students learn best, that's when students do best, that's when teachers do best. I know that masks worked. We were talking about should we return full-time, and I was concerned about it, and I didn't want to. And as we looked at the data, the school buildings with their masking, hand washing, and social distancing were able to maintain lower rates and lower risks of infection than the general community. As we come in for 5 days a week, that means we're pulling off the social distancing. I don't want to change another variable right now. I know that masks and hand washing are working. Let's see if we can pull the social distancing out and get the kids in, and then let's see where we're at in a month. I really like the idea that what we're doing, that masks make sense right now. When we ended, I said this at our last meeting, but when we ended the school year in, obviously in June, I was, how did I put it? I was cautiously optimistic, and I've really enjoyed being able to take my mask off and be outside without a mask and go to restaurants and go to stores. I see that things are changing again. And while I wish I could say that there was a specific end in sight with COVID, I don't see it right now. I think we are following the path that this presents to us. And so there are times when we can say, no, we're done with masks. And then we're back to, no, we need to wear masks again. I'm really mindful that as we return to school, the traditional process is that kids come all back together from being all around, and then the colds and the flus start kicking in. And so I'm imagining that COVID's going to be right there with it. If we can do things to minimize that, to mitigate that, I want to do that to keep the kids in school 5 days a week because we know that's what's best for them. Thank you.
My name is Patrick Saucier. 17 months ago, everything shut down. Useless fact, 17 months ago I started on the board, and I think Becky blames me for COVID. She does. Last week, Governor Mills put a mandate out for healthcare workers to give proof of vaccination or lose their license. I will tell you, last weekend was a very miserable weekend for me. I was extremely angry on this decision. I said some things that were out of line, and luckily for me, the individuals that I said that to were gracious enough to let me cool off and sit down and have a conversation with me, and made me realize a lot of things that's going on. And I ask a little bit of leeway from everyone to let me get to my point. Last year when all this stuff started, I know some people don't like them, but it doesn't matter. I need a phrase that was used. President Trump in one of the pressers made a comment that we're fighting an invisible enemy. I truly believe that that comment actually has more meaning than just the coronavirus. And I think in this situation, it's fear. I think we're fighting fear. We all have been bombarded for the past year and a half with so much information from the mainstream media, social media, the government, the CDC, which is not a government agency, and our friends and family. On one end of the pendulum, you have people who, let me take a step back, straight across the board, the base of the whole thing, I think deep down inside, everybody, no matter how strong they appear on the outside, fears getting COVID and getting sick because it's an awful disease. I've seen it personally. So with that, you have one side that is very fearful of getting coronavirus, passing it on to family members, death happening to loved ones and themselves. And I think everyone has that to a certain extent, just some people have more of it. And then on the other side, you have people that are afraid of losing their rights because of the pandemic. I'm afraid of losing my rights. I'm afraid of losing my job. And I sit here today with the task of having to choose to look at my sons to say, hey, you're going to have to wear masks this year in school or not. And it's difficult because I see the passion on both sides. And I appreciate everyone taking the time to come and talk to us tonight. And I want you to know that it's a very difficult decision. But I think more importantly, tonight we have to start as a community to start healing. This is the time for us to get together. There is so much anger and hatred out there. We have to pull together to get through this. If not for our own sanity, for the sanity of our children. We are setting an example to our children. And it's very difficult to have your spouse look at you and say, hey, reel it in a little bit. The boys are watching. And I'll admit that. My wife has said that to me a few times. I believe that we each and every one of us have the right to make the decision that's best for our families. But I also know that we as a board have the privilege to vote on this. And the difference between rights and privileges is privileges can be taken away, rights cannot be. So with that, just a call to the board and to everybody here and people watching, let's start pulling together as a community. Thank you.
I'm not really great at speaking in front of everybody, but I felt like I needed to bring up a few of my concerns. If we were to go with parental choice, who would supervise that the parents wanted their children to wear the masks, that they would actually be wearing the masks? I don't know who would supervise that. My next concern is, in looking at the survey, it appeared to me that the staff were more comfortable having people masked. They're the ones that are responsible for making our kids feel safe. I have a hard time not supporting that. And I'm concerned about bullying. If somebody's not wearing a mask or somebody is wearing a mask, if it's not across the board, I'm concerned about how that will be for our children. Again, not great with public speaking, but you got my point.
I just want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. This is definitely a decision, like my fellow board members have said, that has weighed heavy on our hearts. I'm really torn. I'm an educator. I have the privilege of working with children with special needs. My school was in school 5 days a week last year, and we masked and did face shields the entire time. The children learned, they flourished. If there was anxiety, we dealt with it. They had mask breaks. We used the plexiglass, so we let them use the clear shields instead of the cloth masks. I don't know each of your children. I believe personally in the rights that you have, that I have as a parent. However, as we've set up here, like, our job is to make sure that the 2,000 kids that we're tasked with, they all have the same opportunity for an education. I have talked in the past how important it was to get our children, especially our younger kids, in school last year. We had people that didn't want that. And we went back every month and we looked at things. We took the time to do our research. We all do our research. I personally don't believe either side. For one doctor that says that masks work, there's another doctor that says they don't. For me, having children in school 5 days a week is the most important thing we can do for these kids. As an educator, those kids are coming to me, expecting me to show them the love, the compassion, and to help them through whatever they're dealing with. I've had support from parents, I've had parents concerned, and we work together as schools, educators, school boards. We're doing our best, and I know that this decision tonight, I'm still not 100% sold what I want to do. I kind of don't want to vote because I don't want to upset anyone. I don't like to do that. But I also know that I respect each of you. your ability to make a choice for your family, but I also know that being in school for these kids and not the back and forth quarantine is the best thing that we can do for them to get them back where they need to be educationally, emotionally. We have put into place numerous things to help kids emotionally and socially. We can use face shields instead of the masks if we need to show them the expression. There's just so many things that educators do to make your children successful in the classroom. Again, I appreciate all your comments. Please know that sleep is lost over these decisions for us. The research that we all do on our own time, we're just trying to do the best for all of you and for all of your kids.
Is there something going on we should know about?
I think that microphone's possessed.
I think that was telling me to stop.
It's because Pat Saucier touched it.
My fault.
Pat and I have been friends for about 15 years, and he knows that I love him, so I'm picking on him. Oh, no.
The lights did flicker.
They did. Over on this side, Alyssa, did you have something?
Like many of my fellow board members, I know a lot of you in the audience on both sides of this equation. I wasn't even going to talk because I feel like Veronica said, it's like I want to abstain from the vote because I really am struggling. Oh, okay. Is that better? I don't want to get electrocuted either. Just saying.
Do you want the mic for you?
Yeah. I have 4 children that range from 6 to 23. My oldest is going to be a pharmacist next year. I talk to him a lot about this. My second oldest child has Tourette's and works in retail, and he wears a mask every day, all day long. My little guy's going into 1st grade, and my daughter just got her first vaccine and is going to the middle school. You know, I can appreciate everyone's opinion and stance, and I really hate that we have to be divided. I respect all the people up here, but I feel like as a public education system, we need to do what's best for the 2,000 kids. And right now, Pat is the person with the best recommendation. So I back her up on this one.
Sorry, I didn't do it. I know. It was me. I hate masks. I personally hate masks. Alyssa, I'm going to do a you. I'm going to talk about my family for 30 seconds. Doing a little time check. We have to take a vote. If we bump up against 9:30, we have to vote to go on. So I won't talk for 20 minutes. My oldest daughter works in healthcare. She wears a mask all day, N95. My second daughter works in healthcare. She has to drive, anytime that there's a shift, a day between a shift that she works in Main Med in the emergency department, she has to drive to Main Med to have a PCR test so that she can go to work the next day, so that she can be tested every single time she walks in the door. She puts on her N95 and wears it for 13 hours, 40 hours a week. My oldest daughter does that too. My son goes to a sweet little private Catholic college where they have to be 100% vaccinated and wear masks. He went to college last year, never met one of his professors, lived in a 10 by 10 box called a room, ate all of his meals from a recyclable box that they got to wait in line outside the cafeteria. And he was tested 50 times between January and April for COVID. They had so much COVID on his campus, they had to close down and send kids home. I hate masks, but what I love is our kids, all of our kids, and I love our community. And it is unacceptable to me personally, it's unacceptable to have any more quarantines. And if we can avoid any more quarantines of even one kid, any pool of kids, any class of kids, any teachers, any staff, any of our bus drivers, if we can avoid that by just starting with masks And we're not saying we're going to do it all the way to June. Nobody's saying that. I have the privilege of serving with the commissioner and the National Secretary of Education on committees. They're not saying forever. They're saying, can we get everybody back in the same place at the same time? And you have to have noticed it, your parents. The first month of school, when all the germs get back together again, that's when all the first colds come out, the first flus come out. People are panicked about COVID, and not every single cold is going to be COVID. Not every single one, and hopefully none will. But if we can just start with masks and potentially back off, I don't like it any more than anyone else on the board does. But I think we have a responsibility. We have been sworn in and voted to do a thing, and you guys don't have to vote with me. It's really, I don't want to influence you. You guys should do whatever you want to do. All of you, don't follow me. I'm not the chair in this particular case. I'm just one of you who happens to know what I know, just like you all know what you know. So I'm not suggesting that anyone should do what I say. I am saying that for me, in the many years that I've served on the board, it's our responsibility to keep as many kids in school, not remote learning. There is no plan. There's not going to be a remote academy. The DOE doesn't have a remote option. They don't have that. So in school is where our children belong. And the best way we can get them there and keep them there, I think, is to at least start with mask wearing. And that's my opinion.
So, I think you're ready to call the vote, and you should probably let people know that it is waiting. Yes.
So if nobody on the board has anything else to say, I think that we will call the vote. And just so that you all know, Cullen, okay.
I'd just like to hear the wording of the vote before you call the vote. Could I make one motion?
Sure. Tony.
And this is going to be kind of a question for Pat, and maybe you might know. Mm-hmm. How many in-school transmissions that we know of took place last year? That you could nail down, that was where it was passed in school? Was there any?
Yes, there were.
Okay.
But I can't tell you the number. The nurses have those numbers.
Okay.
Exactly.
So what's
the motion is entirely up to the board as to what type of motion that you would want to make. Whether it's simply just follow the recommendation that was put forth, as simple as that, or if you want it to be specific to masking or not masking or pool testing or whatever it is that you want. It's really up to the board to be making that decision.
And in a case like in a vote like this, it may be close. Just so the public knows, the votes are weighted, and they're weighted by the number of community members so there's 12 board members, and there's equal representation amongst the 4 communities. So when we vote, those votes have weight that are not equal to each town. Does that make sense? It's based on population. Does that make sense? Yes, Cullen.
In recognition of, I'm sorry, am I allowed to talk about
In recognition of the compelling public sentiment, both for and against this proposal, I would like to propose to the board we amend item 4 to, and if you give me a minute, I'll try to think of it, but basically flip it to say that the masking requirement must be positively reaffirmed once a month by the board, it being continuance, rather than it be an open mandate until removed. Basically, we have to come back every month and say, one more month. Exactly.
Absolutely.
It must be reaffirmed every 30 days, each monthly meeting.
Each monthly business meeting, which is on the first Thursday of each month.
Yep.
So we have a motion from Colin, a second from Jim. Now your comments, Matthew.
I mean, I understand his motion, but shouldn't we vote on the main two motions that we have in front of us, whether we have a mask mandate or we do pool testing, and then do his motion for the sunset option?
Without the mic, I would say voting for masks and reaffirming is one vote, pool testing is another vote. My 2 cents.
We don't need 3 votes.
No, I'm saying Colin's thing to revisit the vote every month be tied in with the universal masking one way or the other. Because obviously if we vote yay for masks, we're going to have to re-vote for it every month.
Yeah, I think Cullen needs to clarify whether he is recommending mandated masks that are going to, and that you're going to revisit that as a board on a monthly basis, or are you recommending that you do not mandate masks and that is going to be recommended every month or revisited every month?
So if I understand correctly, on the agenda, the old business is merely a topic to discuss. It's not a motion itself. So I think a motion would be, this is an example, I'm not doing it. I would move, if I were moving, that we accept Pat's recommendation with a substitution for item 4, whereby the board must positively affirm a continuance of the mask mandate on a monthly basis. Should I actually move that? That's not, okay. Right, do we keep doing?
Right, so it's just a clause saying, just whether we re-vote on it every month.
Matt's going to make
I think it's a little too complex for this. No offense, I'm not trying to. The item on the agenda is whether to mandate masks, wearing masks or not. I would like to make a motion that, as it pertained to mask wearing in our schools, that it be left up to the parents to make the decision for their child and what's best for their family, and also leave it up to the staff members to decide whether or not they want to wear a mask or not.
I second that motion. Sorry, Nancy.
Colin didn't. It wasn't a motion. He was doing an example. So. No, okay, yeah, no.
So we have a motion from Pat Saucier and a second from Teresa. Could it be for our choice? Jim?
Point of order, just if a yes vote is for no mask mandate, a no vote is for a mask mandate?
Yes.
Is that what we're talking? Okay.
That is correct.
So, Pat, can you call the roll?
Yes, Nancy Foyer Brown. No. Teresa Garrett.
Yes.
Alyssa Tracy.
No.
Tony V.
No.
Cullen McGuff. Matthew Lillybridge.
No.
Nicole Medor.
Yes.
Becky Fless.
No.
Veronica Babcock.
No.
Matthew Marshall.
Yes.
James Lothridge.
No.
Patrick Saucier.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the total number of points with the weighted votes that we can achieve is 13,612. The vote for, or the weighted vote for Randolph is 878 per person. In Pittston, it's 1,332 per person. And then in Gardner, it's 1,149. So based on all of that, the total, and West Gardner's the same, 1,149. Thank you. So the tally shows that the yeses are 4,779 and the noes are 8,833. So the motion does not pass. I personally think that rather than just leaving it as it means that you're in support of a mask mandate, I think it would be clearer or better to have a motion that specifically states that. And if you wish to incorporate the recommendation from Cullen, that you could do so at that time and just build it into the motion.
If I could, I'll make that motion.
Point of order.
Yes, Colin.
We have to get through old business before we can have a new motion.
You did get through that motion. That motion failed.
I'm sorry, through all the old business before we can have a new motion.
No, that is not true. You had a motion, so it is open, so another motion can be made on that.
Thank you.
Correct.
So I'm looking at this as part of the universal masking, as part of the whole return to school plan for 2021-2022 school year, and I will move that we follow the recommendation put forth by Superintendent Hopkins and Director of Curriculum Hardy. So the 5 days per week of in-person learning for students, universal masking, launch of a board-sanctioned district health response team, and then to modify number 4, the monthly review by the school board to be the an affirmative vote to renew the universal masking, to create a sunset clause in that sense, so that we can adjust procedures based upon current situation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Cullen. Pat, will you call the roll, please?
We have a little bit more clarification.
Discussion?
Yes, I'm sorry, discussion? Yes. Yes.
So for clarity, our next board meeting isn't a month away. It's really just a couple weeks away. So is it a week after we start school?
That's an excellent point. That is the same week in which school opens. So for clarity, my interpretation of the motion would be that it would be the October board meeting because it's a month after we open the doors, right? So it gives the district a month to investigate, to analyze, and to determine what the recommendation will be for the following month.
Does that work, Nancy?
I would like to make sure we have a discussion about it, and I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's fair, but I think in fairness to everyone who's opposed, we should at least have it on the agenda to have a conversation.
At the next meeting in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Would it be unduly burdensome to just require it at any scheduled board meeting? Because we might call an emergency session, and then we'd want the power to revoke or continue.
I'm not clear. Will you ask that question again?
Sure. Instead of making it like time dependent, just anytime the board convenes, that's a standing item of business. Because if we called an emergency session, but we had said we could only reconsider the mask mandate every month, we might hamstring ourselves. So at every scheduled board meeting.
You want to be careful because you may have a scheduled board meeting that has absolutely nothing to do with this. It can be very specific to a different topic. And you don't necessarily want to be forced to have this conversation when you might be in an executive session about contract negotiations, for example. So you just want to be mindful of that. But I hear what you're saying. So it's certainly, Tony made the motion. If Tony is interested in modifying that motion, he is welcome to do so.
I really just wanted clarification on what that meant.
I would tend to leave it as is.
Then, and I will let the board know you have 3 minutes, and within 3 minutes, you are exceeding your board policy that your meetings have to end by 9:30.
Excuse me, Pat. Can we just clarify what the motion is, please? It got a little confusing.
Sure. So the motion that I put forth is to follow the recommendation of the superintendent and director of curriculum, 5 days a week of in-person learning. And these are listed. I'm reading off of the PowerPoint notes. 5 days a week of in-person learning, universal masking. Number 2, launch of a board-sanctioned district health response team, and monthly affirmative vote on the continued on continued masking on. But I really want to keep in monthly affirmative vote on continued masking by the school board and to review procedures based upon the current situation. I want to make sure we're responding to COVID.
Right.
So all the language at number 4 and affirmative vote and regarding universal masking.
Does that clear it up?
It's basically this. Right, but we already voted on number 2, so we really were voting on the other 3. Because if you want me to re-vote on universal masking, then my response to that motion will still be no, even though I support the other 3. I just don't want to support this. Do you hear what I'm saying? Sorry, Rob, I don't have to.
That is true, but the motion on the table, though, is to accept all of the recommendations. That would include the 5 days per week, the universal masking, the launch of a sanctioned district health response team, and, as we said, the monthly review.
Any further discussion or clarity needed?
Kim has it.
It may be, but that's
Yeah,
the
that's-
motion that's on the table right now.
Yep. Yeah. Who has a question?
That's the motion on the table, so I need to call that roll. So Nancy Fortier-Brown. Yes. Teresa Garrett. No. Alyssa Tracy. Yes. Tony Veet.
Yes.
Cullen McGuff.
Yes.
Matthew Lillybridge.
Yes.
Nicole Medor.
No.
Becky Fless.
Yes.
Veronica Babcock.
Yes.
Matthew Marshall.
I'm going to vote yes, only because I want to revisit it every month. Otherwise, I would have voted no.
Okay. James Lothridge.
Yes.
Patrick Saucier.
I have to vote no, but I am in favor of in-person learning.
Okay. So the tally votes are 9,982 yes and 3,630 no. So it passes. You still need to address the pool testing, but before you do, you have to
vote.
make a motion to extend your board meeting per policy.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Yep.
Second. Questions or conversation? You all understand?
I don't know who seconded
Veronica.
All those in favor of staying past 9:30? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so next is pool testing.
Pool testing.
I'd like to make the motion that we do not do pool testing.
Any questions or conversation? She said do not. She would like to move that we do not do pool testing.
So just to clarify, there are potential there's benefits if we do pool testing. There's sort of risks if we do pool testing. I guess the risks I'm seeing are the time it takes in the classroom and how effective kids will be sticking a Q-tip in their nose. I guess what are the other risks with pool testing, and then what are the benefits to pool testing if we do that?
So the benefits to
Sure.
pool testing. The benefits to pool testing is that if you have asymptomatic students or staff who are positive, you are going to have the potential, if they're participating in the pool testing, of catching that prior to them becoming symptomatic, and it will reduce the amount of time in which they may be interacting with other individuals, thus potentially infecting more individuals. So that's the benefit. Downside is it does take time. It is voluntary. So you could be in a classroom and you could have just 2 people participating. You could have another classroom where you have 20 people participating. It's completely voluntary. And so there's the management aspect of it that people have expressed as a concern.
Since we're not executing this, it is the individuals in the front row and Chad hiding in the back who are going to be forced to deal with the pool testing. Can I just get, a thumbs up, thumbs down if you guys would support it, since you're the ones whose day will be directly impacted? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if we do it, I can promise you I can make it as least invasive as possible. Just because there's ways around it to, if 2 kids in a classroom do it and 20 do it in another one, it can be done in 5 minutes or less easily. And Dan, sorry to put you on the spot.
I would offer you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but you can.
That's what I'm saying. Because I saw him cringy. That's what Chad's hiding.
I'm a no because of the same other reason you just said. You can be in a classroom and have 2 kids having to do it and nobody else, and there's a lot of questions about why I have to do it and nobody else has to do it. My school was a land of little people from 4-year-olds to about 8, and they don't understand. So if not everybody's doing it, then
That's why I wanted your opinion. Because you own your little feet to children. You're the ones who get impacted.
and management for the teachers, trying to remember who's allowed, who's not allowed.
I see you all shaking your heads a little bit up and down. Am I right?
I would say I echo that sentiment too, and even as you said it earlier, you can kind of whittle it down to 15 minutes, so 15 minutes is still a lot of time in an hour block class.
I know, and that's why.
Right, I mean, and that's the same class every Monday, that's losing the same time, that adds up to a lot of time over the course of the year, and so I can't say that it's top of my bucket list.
And that's why I wanted your opinion, because I think it can't hurt, but again, I'm not the one doing it. I'm just sending my child to go for it, so.
Chad, yes, no?
I just want to follow up with what Kristen Martin said. She did go to the training last year, and she's against it. So I think somebody that experienced the training and also did some of the testing really has more knowledge than I do on the board.
So is this 30% per class? Well, per building. Okay. Okay, never mind. Okay, good. No minimum.
Nancy? No, her motion was to not do pool testing, so yes means to support not doing pool testing. Yes. Teresa? Yes. Alyssa? Yes. Tony?
No.
Cullen?
Yes.
Matthew Lillybridge?
Just to double check, yes is no, because Matt's looking at
Yes.
the same.
Correct.
Okay, yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Becky? Yes. Veronica? Yes. Matthew Marshall?
Yes.
James Lockwood?
Yes.
Patrick Saucier?
Yes.
So the weighted vote is 12,463 in favor. And 1,149 against. So it passes. Sorry, it passes. Sorry, it passes. We had, it's dead.
My fault again, I'm really sorry about that.
I will try that one more time. There we go. Is that working now? So the yes votes are 12,463. The no votes are 1,149. So it passes that we will not be participating in pool testing. And Becky, I think that is it for old business. The next is executive session for the board to discuss use of property.
Could I make a quick comment before we do that? I just wanted to point out that I appreciate Tony's motion, but within that motion, and I know it's old business at this point, but I won't be able to sleep if I don't point it out. We voted on a motion twice tonight, and I flip-flopped. But there's a reason why I did that, because I thought part of that motion was reasonable. And there were a number of people here that would have voted without 2, which is the mandatory universal masking. If that wasn't on that motion, Teresa would have voted yes, and we would have been able to revisit this every school board meeting. That's why I voted yes. But it didn't pass, so it's unfortunate.
It's going to get visited every month.
Maybe it's just a personal thing that I had to flip-flop, but that's the only reason I did.
Matt, I totally get that. I want to say for the record that we're a board that always gets along, even when we differ. So, and no, Matt, you should not be sorry. Please don't be sorry. I want to make sure that you understand how respected you are for that. And part of my thinking is we need to revisit this every month. And I'm so glad that that's how that went, because it's not right. It's, as I said, we should not be doing any more kids out of school, kids in school, which means we're going to have to watch this like a hawk. We can't let it off of our plate for a second. So I respect and appreciate what you've said, and maybe we could have done the motion differently. Okay? Yeah, well, we're going to watch it. You make us watch it. So we need a motion to go into executive session to discuss use of property.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Motion by Veronica, second by Matthew Lillybridge. All those in favor? Motion carries. I'd like to thank everyone who came out tonight in support of our kids and our public school. I'd like to thank Officer Quintana for being willing to come and be of assistance. Thank you to Rob Munzing and Munzing Media for live streaming our meeting for us. Terry McGuire for always keeping us on the straight and technological narrow. And I hope you all will continue to come to school board meetings and to watch us live streamed every month. Thank you.
We were sitting until you had hands on me, and I'm like, oh my God, she's in the front row. So I sent Pat a message. I'm like,
Then I pulled my shirt up so everybody could see I have pants on.